Chapter 276, Sunrise. Ugh, my head. Ross Weiss clutched her head as she felt an intense headache. She wasn't good with alcohol, but it didn't mean she didn't like it, as it could make her forget about many unpleasant things. Nevertheless, she felt weird. Usually, she would wake up late at noon when she was drunk, but somehow, she woke up. Is it night? Yet, when Ross Weiss saw Magari and Ravel's sleeping faces, she knew that it should be dawn. Moreover, she also checked the current time, which made her sigh in relief since she didn't use the entire day to sleep. Still, she couldn't go back to sleep for some reason, so she stood up and rubbed her temple, going to the bathroom to wash her face, and when she did all of that, she felt better. Only she realized something. Riser-sama? Where are you? While it was a bit embarrassing, Ross Weiss realized that the four of them had slept in the same room the previous night. As she was drunk, she should have forgotten this matter, but the warmth of his body remained stuck as if they had been hugging each other for the entire night. When she thought of this, her face turned crimson and shy, happy by the close connection between them even if she knew it was forbidden. Still, he wasn't in the room, so she searched around for him until she noticed a presence near Lake Akamoto. Riser-sama. Due to the sun that started to rise on the horizon, the clear lake turned into a crimson color like her face, shy yet beautiful. Yet, she didn't care about the scenery. The moment she found him, she didn't hesitate and went after him as soon as she could. She didn't dress her best and only found something that she could, so her clothes were rather thin during the cold morning, yet for her, who was born in the Norse myth, this temperature was like a summer in her country. Riser-sama. Ross Weiss stopped when she called his name since his figure was just too worn out. It was as if he had kept many things inside him and kept all of them inside without being able to express them, so she made an unexpected move that she had never thought she would do. Riser was startled, but he stopped his body from moving when he realized who had hugged him so suddenly. Ross Weiss. Are you okay, Riser-sama? Riser fell in silence and then smiled softly. Of course, I am okay. You are not forcing yourselves? I am not. But aren't you forcing yourself by hugging me like this? When Riser mentioned her bold actions, Ross Weiss blushed and quickly lowered her head, hiding away from his gaze by pressing her face against his broad back. Did you hate it, Riser-sama? No. Then, let's stay like this for a while. Riser wanted to say something, but in the end, he stopped. Everything he did, and done, everything, all of them, needed to be kept deep in his heart. No one else needed to know, as this sin was something that he needed to bear. He knew that his actions might be quite extreme for some people, but he knew he needed to do this. He didn't want to, but when he knew that someone wished to kill him, gathering together as they talked about their plan, would they think that he would let them go? The time was near. Riser had a feeling that something major in his life would happen, and this would determine his life. If he succeeded, then his goal and ambition would be achieved. However, if he failed, then he would die and disappear. He knew that it might be better to erase all the threats as soon as possible, but being in this position was troublesome, and he wished to give away the position of Lucifer as soon as possible, especially when it had become a shackle for him. Still, at least, his peace was coming, right? He tried to smile as best as he could, but he couldn't, and it made him confused as he was about to reach his peace. However, he didn't bother to think and focused on his ambition. However, at this moment, he suddenly remembers his previous conversation with Azazel. How about you forgive? Azazel said those words with a relaxed smile. Forgive. It was for those who weren't involved in talking about forgiving others and whatnot, giving thoughtless advice as if they knew the best, but for him, who received many injustices after his transmigration into this new life, he needed to tense his body. Like a hedgehog, protecting his life from the harms that came toward him. Yet, he knew that he was lucky, especially when he wasn't alone. There were many who supported him, loved him, and believed him. They would do their everything to be his strength, yet it was also due to this that he felt uncomfortable, especially when he thought his action would bring sadness to those who had stayed by his side. He glanced at Ross Weiss, who hugged him tightly from behind. If it was before, he wouldn't hesitate to turn and hug her tightly in his arms, taking her lips that had never been tainted by anyone and making her into his woman. However, now he didn't think that he was worthy of her, especially when he had used her to understand many things about the Norse myth. Still, as a villain, this should be normal, right? As expected, I can't get used to the feeling of being a villain. Riser-sama. What are you doing here? Well, I heard the sunrise is beautiful, so I came out to watch. Riser then pulled Rosswise to stand by his side and then pulled her onto a nearby bench so they could sit comfortably. It's almost time. Let's watch it together. Okay. Rosswise followed his words obediently, never fought, and was docile as she kept stealing a glance in his direction. She knew that it was wrong, especially when she knew he was married, but while their meeting was short, she wished to be his strength and be by his side forever. It's starting. His words reminded her of the sunrise, yet Rosswise couldn't take her eyes away from him, especially when she saw his face shimmer in the gentle light of the sunlight. Subconsciously, she held his hand tighter as she watched the sunrise together without knowing the terror that happened in her hometown, and the sinner who caused that terror sat by her side. Nevertheless, Rosswise knew that she had fallen in love with this man. Chapter 277, Lake. The next day, Sona and a few of her group joined Riser's trip to the Fukushima prefecture, enjoying the fall weather in the northern part of this country. The fall is like you, dear. Why so? Riser looked at Sona curiously, wondering why this woman had become poetic all of a sudden. The leaf becomes blazing red like your color. Sona showed a gentle expression as she leaned on his shoulder. I like it. I like it too, right? All the unpleasantness that he felt yesterday was no longer there and disappeared as if it never existed. Still, his days didn't change as he enjoyed his life and became stronger, especially after taking down two powerful gods in the Norse myth. Naturally, with those feats, he was given two rewards. Congratulations, you have received Magu Magu no Mi Complete Version and Sub Sub no Mi Complete Version. Naturally, he had eaten the two devil fruits, which gave him two new abilities. However, whether he became stronger or not, he wasn't really sure since when he reached this stage, it was hard to see the improvement in his strength, but there was no doubt that his ability to survive became stronger due to those two devil fruits. The first devil fruit he gained, especially after killing Odin, he got Magu Magu no Mi, and the moment he ate it, he became a magma devil and had the ability to turn into a magma and manipulate magma. Previously, it wasn't that he couldn't control magma, but it was complicated as magma was different from a flame. Magma is a combination of soil and flame. While being a phoenix gave him the ability to manipulate flame, he couldn't manipulate soil. Yet, it didn't mean that it was impossible, it was only quite complicated. The moment he gained this devil fruit, manipulating magma was as easy as walking into the park. Still, with this ability, it was easier for him to destroy the earth as he could move the core of the earth, causing a mass volcanic explosion. More importantly, due to his first reward, Flame Manipulation Mastery, it was easier for him to master this power. Nevertheless, even without this power, he believed that he would destroy the world. However, compared to his first reward, his second reward was something that attracted him the most. This was also the reward he gained after he killed Loki, the evil god who planned to hold Ragnarok. Naturally, before he killed Odin, he killed Loki first, finding him by using location, and by then, it was easier for him to throw all the blame on Loki. As for the aftermath of that incident, he decided not to think about that matter and focused on his second reward. Sub Sub no Mi. As he had eaten this devil fruit, it made him into a slip man. All the things that touched and attacked him would slip off, and none of them would affect him. The only unfortunate thing was that he couldn't use this power to slip off from this responsibility. However, there was no doubt with this ability, he became invincible in close combat, as all of the close combat attacks would just slip off when they touched his body. Even better, his appearance became better due to this devil fruit since after eating this devil fruit, his appearance became fair. However, as his basic was good, the improvement wasn't that much. What is it? You became more handsome somehow. Really? Yes. Riser smiled due to Sona's praise, but he also said, aren't you the same? Didn't you use your ability to make yourself more beautiful? Well, Sona blushed and then snuggled on his chest. It's all because of you. After her training with Riser, her head was finally opened, and the limit which she had put on her brain before was no longer there. By using her water manipulation power, she made her appearance better by soothing and moisturizing her skin, keeping it in a perfect state all the time. There was no doubt when anyone knew about Sona's ability, they would be jealous to death. For women, becoming more beautiful was their #1 goal. However, why did you choose Lake Akamoto as a place for a holiday? The two of them were on a ship they rented from a nearby stall as they sailed on Lake Akamoto, enjoying the scenery and the surroundings. Moreover, with Sona's power, there was no need for them to row with paddles, as Sona could manipulate the water to move the ship automatically based on her wish. You don't like it? No. It's okay, but most people will choose Kyoto or the central area, right? It's troublesome to go to the center of Japan now. Is it the 5 principal clans? You know. Well, Wanisama sometimes told me that those groups of humans are troublesome. Sona then asked worriedly, will they trouble you? There is no need to worry about a group of humans who aren't even the holder of Longinus. The 5 principal clans were good and all, but their limit was only that. Their strongest was nothing compared to his might. This wasn't arrogant, but the reality was like this. Still, he felt that he might as well have taken all the sacred beasts of the 5 principal clans so they wouldn't be noisy again. Well, let's do it when everything is over. The danger was right in front of him, but even so, he believed he could win. More importantly, is there something happening on the Kua lately? Something? Sona tapped her chin for a moment and said, I'm not sure whether this is something huge or not, but Diodora Astaroth has often visited Kuo town lately. Diodora? You mean the heir of the Astaroth? Riser showed a surprise as if he didn't know anything. Yes. Sona nodded. It seems he is interested in Asia on Ria's peerage. Ah, that girl? Huh? Unlike you, he seems to love a pure maiden who is related to a church. Sick hobby. Riser showed disgust, but he noticed his wife was staring at him. What is it? Don't you think those pure maidens that are related to church are cute? They are cute. Then. But my wife is the cutest. Riser smiled as he hugged his wife tightly in his arms. Come on. Say something. Don't keep staring at me like that in silence. Sona only rolled her eyes. If he could control his desire and only loved her alone, he might believe his words, but how many women did this guy have? Nevertheless, it didn't change the fact that she loved him. Are you going to help, Rias? Why should I? I thought that you wanted to make all the girls on Ria's peerage to be part of your harem. Was that something that you should say as my wife? Riser thought that he might need to teach this bitch tonight. Or should he do it now? After all, it would be his first time to do it on the top of a ship and in the middle of the lake. Well, wait. No. Riser refused, but he knew he needed to make a solution for his wife's worry. But if you were worried, how about you make a mist around us? As she was unable to stop her husband, Sona followed his advice by creating a mist around them, so no one would be able to see what they were about to do. Only during their moment did the sound of her gasp and moan become a new legend that made this like a popular tourist spot in the future. Still, the happy days soon ended, and it was time for him to go back. But when he was about to go back to the underworld, he happened to meet Diodora Astaroth. Good day, Riser-sama. It's really my good luck to be able to meet you here. Diodora showed a happy smile when he met Riser. Watching this smile, Riser wondered whether it was okay for him to beat this guy up. Chapter 278, Die in Despair. Riser looked at Diodora, who was surrounded by his harem. Diodora? Are you on holiday? Still, while he had seen them before, he had to say that Diodora was really good at finding a harem member. The only bad thing was that Diodora's method wasn't classy, it was a brute method. No. I'm here to court someone, Riser-sama. Diodora maintained his gentle smile. Court? Oh, who is it that made the young master of the Astaroth house fall so deeply that he decided to go to the human world? She is one of Rias Gremory's peerage members. Asia Argento. That's her name. Diodora admitted to Riser, the girl he loved, without hesitation before he sighed sadly. But unfortunately, Rias didn't want to exchange her bishop with me. Riser chuckled and said, but this isn't going to make you give up, right? Of course. Diodora nodded. From the moment I saw her, I knew that she was the one for me, and I wouldn't give up no matter what. Then, work hard. There was no need for him to say more as he only said those words for small talk. Diodora also knew that Riser wouldn't help him, which made him sigh inwardly, but then he smiled once again before he showed a worried and hesitant expression. Riser-sama, there is something that I want to talk with you. Talk? Yes. Diodora hurriedly nodded, showing a picture of an individual who found something unbelievable. This is a secret that I happened to find and I think that you need to hear it, Riser-sama. Then, tell me now here. Facing such an exaggerated act, Riser only said calmly, I can't let anyone hear this news except for you. If possible, can you follow me to some places? Why don't you tell your older brother? Diodora's expression became disgusting for some reason before he shook his head. My older brother won't believe me, but you are different, Riser-sama. Why would you think that I would listen to you? Nevertheless, Riser was intrigued. Then, why don't you lead me? Please follow me. I will tell you when we come near our Astaroth domain since that way, no one won't be able to listen to us. Well, Let's go. When Rossweiss and Ravel were about to follow, Reiser stopped them. You two go back first. I will follow him. But, come on, Rossweiss. Ravel stopped Rossweiss and pulled her to the train, returning to the Phoenix domain in the beautiful city crafted by Reiser. Can you guide me now? Yes, please follow me. Diodora continued to maintain a smile as he ordered members of his peerage to give Reiser the best service. Give your best service to Reiser-sama. Yes, Diodora-sama. What do you want them to do? Reiser asked curiously. Well, I have trained them well. Do you want to taste them, Reiser-sama? Diodora asked with a smile. No, it's okay. I have a wife, and don't talk like that again since it is disgusting. Yes. When Reiser emitted his aura subconsciously, Diodora quickly covered in fear, but he held on as he thought about what he planned to do and grinned inwardly, thinking about his bright future, especially when he thought about what he was about to do. Then, don't waste my time. Yes. Diodora felt his body tense, nervous as he realized that Reiser's weight was growing even heavier, but at the same time, he also felt humiliated, especially when he was the young master of the Astaroth house. How dare Reiser treat him like this? Reiser didn't care about Diodora's thoughts and only felt that Diodora was disgusting. Still, it didn't mean all the devils were like Diodora. Nevertheless, he felt sorry for the girls around Diodora since it was so easy for them to be discarded by their master. Yet, even so, they still followed him faithfully. Still, he wondered what Diodora was planning to do. As they entered the train, Reiser sat quietly in a private room with Diodora's women, who served him wine and some food as he rejected Diodora's companion. Diodora, who was outside, also didn't care about Reiser's attitude as everything would end soon. Diodora-sama, are you sure about this? Shut up. Don't question my decision. Diodora got angry at his queen and then snorted. Becoming a Lucifer made him arrogant, but can he maintain that attitude after this? Diodora's queen still felt that this plan would end up in failure, especially when she thought the pressure emitted by Reiser. Even though it was subtle, it made her give up all the resistance and know that no matter what she did, everything was meaningless. Diodora also felt the same way, but he thought the old Satan faction was stronger. In his heart, the new government was as good as it was over, and by following the old Satan faction, he believed he would be able to ride on this wave and rise to a greater height. Whatever Mao's were, they were nothing but fake. Still, Diodora, who could hear the laughter of his women in Reiser's private room, felt strange and slightly annoyed, thinking that he should educate them later. Their trip didn't take too long, as Diodora was quite impatient, and soon, they reached their destination. Where are you going to bring me? To be honest, isn't it better for you to talk on the train before? But this is important news, and I can't let anyone else hear this news except for you, Reiser-sama. We're already in the middle of nowhere now. Why don't you tell me now? At this moment, they were in the countryside within the Astaroth domain. It was a place with a small number of people, or, rather, none at all. If there was something that was worthy about this place, it would be the beautiful nature within their surroundings. Diodora didn't answer Reiser's question and kept staring at his watch for a while until he smiled. Then, I will let you know that I am related to the Chaos Brigade. Why do you tell me now? Because you need to be erased, Reiser-sama. Good job, Diodora. Then, suddenly, thousands of magic circles appeared at the same time, and many figures appeared, surrounding Reiser. Whether it was devils, humans, magicians, or even monsters, they were all staring at Reiser dangerously. Reiser, who sat in the middle, also realized that he was trapped within a barrier, but he ignored the thousands of enemies around him. Instead, he was more interested in the barrier user who trapped him. After all, even though this place was similar, it was different, as if it was artificially created. If there was something that was capable of doing this, there was only one, but he needed to confirm this. How did he confirm whether his conjecture was correct? A barrier? Ha ha ha. You can't go out. You can't ask for help. You are in the middle of a barrier created by Dimensional Lost, one of the strongest Longinus that is capable of destroying the world. The best way to confirm whether his conjecture was correct or not was by asking it directly to his opponent, as he was sure that his opponent would tell him arrogantly. As expected, a man who seemed to be the leader quickly explained to him. I see. A Dimensional Lost. Reiser nodded, then looked at the man, who seemed to be familiar for some reason. Oh, right. Who are you? Everyone fell into silence. The man who seemed to be the leader gritted his teeth in hatred as he grew his demonic power that was enough to crush everyone's heart, feeling hopeless by the intense fear of this man's power. You damn fake. Remember my name. I am the one who will kill you, the true descendant of the four Mao. My name is Cruzri Asmodeus. Remember my name as you feel intense regret before you fall into the abyss. Cruzri shouted, die in despair as you regret your mistake of killing Kateria Leviathan. Riser only remembered that this man was the one that he had controlled before, but he lacked an interest in this man, and this wasn't the time for them to die. So, boom. At that moment, their hearts felt like they were crushed, and their brain was hit by a hammer. Their blood was drained from their bodies as none of them were able to stand before they fell one by one, and many of them directly passed out due to fear. However, Riser didn't care about those small fries and put his focus on the one who controlled this barrier. Chapter 279. George, who is confused. George. That's his name. While his name might be a common name, his origin wasn't common as he was the descendant of Johann George Faust, the man who made a pact with the legendary devil, Mephistopheles. However, this wasn't all, as he also had another identity, and that was the sub-leader of the hero faction on the Chaos Brigade. Yes, he was the sub-leader of one of the factions within the terrorist organization. For others, it might be strange, especially for him to join this organization, as with his identity, he could reach a high position easily in the world of magicians. However, George knew no matter how high he stood within the world of magicians, he would never stand on the top among the supernatural world as he was just a human. Nevertheless, someone came and met him, making him realize his true purpose in this world, and he wished to help that person. So he joined this terrorist organization to become a hero, protecting humanity from vile supernatural beings. His action might be strange as he joined a terrorist organization to become a hero, but they needed more strength, and joining this group gave them even stronger strength as Ophis would give all the members of this organization part of her strength. As for him, well, he didn't need to sense. Besides Johann George Faust, he was also one of the holders of Longinus, Dimensional Lost. As the descendant of Johann George Faust, he was given many advantages that the majority didn't have, whether it was talents or resources. He got everything, learning all the magic that had been collected by his ancestor and the group created by his ancestor, which was even better than his ancestor, as his ancestor wasn't as good as him when he was young. However, his real power came from the Dimensional Lost, which is ranked among the top 4 Longinus. Yes, compared to Boosted Gear or even Divine Divider, the Dimensional Lost was stronger. While some might feel unacceptable, when one understands the power of the Dimensional Lost, they would understand. Dimension Lost has the ability to create a special mist that can block any attack, as well as transport anything inside of it into an artificial space. The mist can also be used to reinforce dimensions. Dimensional Lost might not possess direct offensive capabilities, but it is the most powerful amongst sacred gears related to barriers in space. Thus, it carries tremendous power over dimensions. In fact, if the mist reaches the scale of countries, it can transfer along, as well as its people, into the dimensional gap to be destroyed. Scary, right? Yes, this Longinus could even destroy the world. Fortunately, no users had reached such a level, including George, but he believed that he would reach that level soon. Frankly, when the Chaos Brigade lacked funds for their activity, he was the one who worked the most since, due to his Longinus, he was in charge of logistics. While George wanted to complain as he wasn't a courier or a taxi driver, he knew that a fund was necessary, especially when they had so many people around them. While the majority of the hero faction might be teenagers and didn't need a salary to maintain them since everyone had been brainwashed to help the faction for the greater purpose, they still needed to eat. If they wanted to eat, they needed food, and to buy food, they needed money. Without being able to sell fake Phoenix tears, they could only become robbers or bandits. While many were dissatisfied, they could do nothing since the strongest faction within the Chaos Brigade, the old Satan faction, was also helpless about this matter. So, while they didn't want to, in the beginning, they continued to rob many to get their funds. Nevertheless, what surprised him was their attacks on the Norse myth a few days ago. Whether it was, he or all the others were dumbfounded when they saw the mayhem within the Norse myth. The proud gods that were born in the Viking era were either running or fighting. Many died, and it was a scene of terror that they had never thought of. Was this Ragnarok? This is what they thought at that time, and his expression became solemn when they thought everything was caused by the old Satan faction. As the old Satan faction happily joined the war, causing more chaos along with the other members of the Chaos Brigade, once again, George was tasked to steal the immense wealth of the Norse myth. While George was helpless, he also didn't reject this idea since he didn't want to join this chaos. Nevertheless, due to Ragnarok, No one cared about the immense wealth as no one was sure whether they could stay alive during the crisis. By then, everything went smoothly, only they quickly retreated since Thor, the strongest within the Norse myth, went on a rampage and almost destroyed everything. Still, as long as they got money, everything was good, and by now, all the funds were controlled by the hero faction. Nevertheless, for the old Satan faction that could smoothly retreat and cause such destruction on the Norse myth, George knew that he couldn't take them lightly, and he still needed to appear obedient as he wanted to know what they were planning. Frankly, George felt that there was something strange about the Ragnarok on the Norse myth, but he needed time to uncover this mystery. "We will kill Riser Lucifer." When those words fell, George's leader immediately agreed to lend George to the old Satan faction. Riser Lucifer. While this name might have been unfamiliar before, it had become the brightest star in the supernatural world. Or rather, everyone knew his name, especially with all the feats he had done. As the new Lucifer, Riser was known for his toughness and brutality, especially the fake Phoenix Tears incident. Not only the members of the old Satan faction but many members of the hero faction were killed by him. Moreover, this guy was also the reason why they were forced to become robbers. George hated this guy, so he was also happy when he thought that he could kill Riser. With the confidence that came from destroying the Norse myth, all of them moved together as they were ready to kill Riser Lucifer. Riser might be Lucifer, but so what? He was just a devil, not a god like Thor or others. Moreover, Riser was definitely alone, especially when he was baited by a traitor within the underworld. Then, when Riser came, everything was settled. He was trapped, and it was time to kill him. Only, George was filled with terror when he saw Riser, and he directly wished to run away when he felt like Riser was staring in his direction. "No, I need to run away." George felt that he needed to run away as far as possible or else he would die. Yet, silly hide. At that moment, George felt all the scenery before him change before he coughed but was unable to breathe. What? George widened his eyes as he saw Riser had caught him and grasped his neck tightly. "Hello." Riser greeted George with a smile. Chapter 280. Unfathomable. By using the location, Riser found George, and by using his Warp No Me ability, it was easy for him to teleport the owner of the Dimensional Lost in front of him. Nevertheless, he didn't plan to kill George. No, he planned to take Dimensional Lost. Why? Why can't I use my Longinus? George, whose neck was grasped by Riser, was in disbelief as he was unable to use his Longinus. Riser only smiled and didn't intend to explain why George was unable to use his Longinus as it was meaningless. Nevertheless, if someone forgot why he could make George unable to use his Longinus, it was all due to the ability he stole from Rivism. By using Degranate, he separated the Sacred Gear Canceller ability from Rivism and gained this ability. With this ability, no matter how strong the Dimensional Lost was, it was meaningless since it couldn't be activated. Nevertheless, facing a Sacred Gear user, was Riser invincible? The answer is yes. Nevertheless, it didn't mean this ability was invincible since there was a limit. However, was there even any existence that could break this limit? Riser couldn't imagine it and thought that as long as they were a Sacred Gear user, all of them could only bow down under him. George. Everyone was dumbfounded by the change of situation. Previously, they were full of confidence, especially when they had gone on a rampage on the Norse myth. They caused mayhem and were even on the verge of collapsing the entire Norse myth. But facing Riser? The thought of winning couldn't cross their minds at all, and all of them became hopeless as they thought about their fate, which was as good as dead. Diodora and his peerage members were also scared silly, and they were unable to do anything as they could only piss on their pants, hoping for the Cows Brigade to win. Only Venetian shock. At that moment, all of them suddenly felt dizzy, and they lost all of their powers before crumbling to the ground, losing their consciousness. Not even one of them remained, and all of them fell like a domino. The only ones left were Diodora and his peerage members, who stood in a daze as they were unable to believe the scene before them. Heat syncope. This was the secret behind his technique, which was fainting or dizziness as a result of overheating. By enveloping his opponent's bodies with heat, Riser could easily defeat them without even raising his hands. Still, some of them even burned into ashes directly without leaving any remains. Diodora and his peerage members even became dizzy as their bodies were trembling due to fear as they saw how easily Riser defeated all of them. Frankly, except for standing, they couldn't see Riser doing anything. Yet, for one thing, Riser's power was unfathomable. Riser, who was holding George, who passed out on his arm, looked at Diodora with a smile and said, "Thank you for baiting them here, Diadora Kuin. Ah, yes, it's my pleasure to serve you, Riser-sama. Diadora quickly kowtowed and showed his allegiance. The rest also followed, hoping for Riser to forgive them. As for why Riser didn't kill all of them and only a few, they didn't understand. But even if they were curious, they didn't dare to say anything. Riser also ignored them and just took out the Dimensional Lost from George's body. Still, he thought that it would be difficult as Dimensional Lost was a Longinus, but it seemed it was easier than he had thought. It was so easy that he was speechless, and the moment he got his hands on this Longinus, he could easily manipulate it like it was his limb. If you want to see, just see, but don't talk. Diadora felt that his heart was almost stopped, and he was just in fear at that moment, but at the same time, he was also marveled by Riser's power that was capable of stealing the Dimensional Lost and using it at ease. Still, he followed Riser's words faithfully since Riser's words were absolute, especially when his life was in Riser's hands. Nevertheless, Riser thought that this Dimensional Lost worked well with his Moku Moku no Mi ability, and he could combine it easily. There might be a big difference between smoke and mist, even if their shape was quite similar, but it wasn't difficult for him to combine the two abilities. Is it due to there not any soul residing in the Dimensional Lost? Unlike the boosted gear or the Divine Dividing, which had the souls of Drake and Albion inside, there was nothing inside the Dimensional Lost. It was just a tool. Nothing more, nothing less. Still, what should he do with George here? Should he kill him? No. Instead, he might as well use George, especially since he got his new reward. Congratulations, you have received Link. It was an ability that made him capable of taking on the powers of others who allied themselves with him. This ability didn't make him steal the abilities of others. Instead, as long as someone gave him permission to use their abilities and energies, he would become even stronger. In other words, it was a perfect power for a leader like him. With an alliance of devils, angels, and fallen angels, along with the East Yukai faction and also the Japanese pantheons, as long as all of them lent their power to him, he was simply invincible. Well, even if they didn't lend him their powers, he was still invincible. Nevertheless, the reason why this ability was suitable for him was because he could lend his abilities to his ally, too. As he had taken Dimensional Lost from George, this guy had lost the ability to control the Dimensional Lost. However, with Link, Riser could lend George the ability of Dimensional Lost. Now, why did he do this? It was because he needed George to become his eyes on the hero faction within the Chaos Brigade. By looking into George's memory, Riser understood many things about the hero faction, especially when George was the sub-leader of this faction, and because of this, he knew the real power of the leader and their connection with a few other myths. The hero faction didn't matter, but the relationship of the hero faction with these other myths was troublesome, especially when this group of myths wasn't weak. Riser was busy with something, and he wanted to clear up those troubles first, but more importantly, he didn't want to be caught in more trouble. He also felt that the hero faction could become a good scapegoat for him, so for his power of Mimo Mimo no Mi to work well, he needed to make some adjustments. When everything cleared up, Riser used his Mimo Mimo no Mi power. Echo Erasure. At that moment, all the memories of those who had attacked him except for Diadora and his peerage members changed. Throwing George away like trash, Riser then looked at Diadora with a smile. Diadora didn't dare to talk and just looked at Riser with an awkward smile. Riser didn't say anything and suddenly released the power of Pido Pido no Mi, putting a collar on Diadora's neck. Riser-sama. Diadora was scared silly when his neck was caught in a collar. Kill yourselves by grasping your own neck. Chapter 281. Slave. Diadora was confused and wondered whether Riser had gone crazy since there was no way for him to kill himself, right? Yet, his hands moved by themselves before they grasped his neck tightly, ready to kill himself. What? Even if it was hard for him to talk, Diadora was scared, silly, and completely in terror as he tried to force himself to stop, but he couldn't. Diadora couldn't control his own body, and his hands tried to kill himself. Riser-sama, please forgive me. Forgive me. Please don't kill me. Stop this, Riser-sama. Diadora kept begging Riser, completely frightened by what was happening. What was happening? Why did he try to kill himself? Was this the power of the collar? Diadora kept crying, beginning, but Riser was just sitting, staring at him blankly. No, I don't want to die. Riser-sama, please forgive me. This way of death was too scary. If it was a painless death as he was unable to do anything, Diadora might not say anything since he was unable to do anything, But this way of death was just too much. Diodora's peerage members were also scared, and their faces were pale as they looked at the collars on their necks. But they didn't dare to say anything as they were afraid they might also fall into the same fate as their master. Yet, no matter how Diodora struggled, his body wouldn't listen to him, and all of them worked together to kill himself. Riser-sama. Diodora was crying, completely in terror, as he knew his death was near. But when he was about to die, Riser said, "Stop. Cough. Cough. Cough." Diodora coughed continuously as he greedily gasped for the air. "Drink this." A bottle of the Phoenix tears rolled by Diodora's side, which made Diodora thank Riser. "Thank you very much. Thank you very much." Diodora drank the Phoenix tears without hesitation. As for the thought that it was poison or not, there was no such thing on his head as Riser could kill him anytime. "That's a power that I have developed. Right now, whatever order that I want you to do, you can't refuse and can only follow my words. Please forgive me, Riser-sama. I will do anything for you as long as you forgive me. Whether it is women, money, or even everything on the Astaroth house, I will give them to all of you." Diodora had already given up since he knew no matter what he did, there was no way for him to resist Riser. Even the old Satan faction, who was proud of their new power, was helpless in front of Riser. "Don't treat me like a bad guy, Diodora." Riser smiled. "Weren't you the one who tried to kill me?" "I." Diodora felt endless regret and could only bow his head until his head bled. "I was blind. I was being deceived. I was being forced by them. Please forgive me, Riser-sama. Please." Riser looked at Diodora and asked curiously, "You won't threaten me by using the power of Astaroth House? Why you think I would do so?" Diodora tried to force his smile. "Usually, someone like you will threaten me with cliché words by saying that you can't kill me since I am the young master of the Astaroth House and the little brother of Ajuka Beelzebub." Riser perfectly mimicked the role of an enemy with a great background who was about to lose to the protagonist in the story. Diodora. Everyone. Diodora wanted to refute, but he couldn't since he knew he really thought of something like that. "I would never say like that. And my life is with you after all. Moreover, what can the Astaroth House do in front of your might, Riser-sama?" He was completely helpless since he knew no matter how strong the Astaroth House was, it was meaningless in front of Riser. As for his older brother, even Diodora knew that Ajuka didn't care about himself. Riser smiled and said, "However, if you really say that, I will make an order for you, and everyone here to massacre all the population of the Astaroth House, making you a criminal so that you will be killed by your own family. Everyone. Ah, if you are worried that I might expose my deed, then you don't need to worry since I can modify your memory about me. So no one will know that I am the one who make you do all of the atrocity. If you don't believe me, I have already modified all the memories of all the individuals in this place, so you can check them when we go back." No. I believe you, Riser-sama." So what if Diodora didn't believe Riser? In front of overwhelming power, Diodora could do nothing. Still, there must be a reason why Riser didn't kill him, so his head quickly moved and asked, "If you have something you wish me to do, please say since I will do anything for you, Riser-sama." "You are smart." Riser smiled. "Then, tell me from the beginning what you know about the Cows Brigade and what you did after you joined this organization. Also, let's talk while we walk." "Yes." "Ah. Let your peerage members prepare me wine and a cigarette." "Yes." Under the lead of Riser, Diodora and his peerage members left shakily as they looked at those who had been defeated by Riser before they looked at Riser's back in fear. Lucifer. They clearly understood why Riser got this title. Nevertheless, Diodora didn't waste his time and told everything that he knew and how he joined. He even told Riser about the Ophis' snake that made him stronger, which was something that he recommended to Riser as the power of Ophis really made him stronger and also the reason why he could defeat Seekvaria Agars easily. Still, even if Diodora and the others gained this power, it was meaningless in front of Riser's might, which made them helpless. Listening to Diodora's story under the care of Diodora's women, Riser was in silence while thinking that Diodora's queen was good at massage since his tense shoulders slowly loosened up and felt good. "There is something that I want you to do. Please tell me. I will do everything for you," Diodora hurriedly said since he knew it was his chance to show his loyalty. "You are about to face Rias later, right?" "Yes." Diodora nodded, but then he asked, "What do you want me to do, Riser-sama? Do you want Rias? Or the other girls? Do you think I am lustful like you?" Diodora glanced at all of his women behind Riser and didn't say anything. "Help me to kill Issei Hayato." "Eh?" Diodora was surprised and asked, "Just that?" "Just that." Riser smiled and said, "I know that you are curious about something, but do you have the confidence to kill him?" "I will kill him." Even if Diodora was told to kill Rias, he was confident since, with the protection of his family, older brother, and Riser, everything was okay. As for Issei, Diodora could kill him as much as he wanted to. You don't need to be afraid, and you don't need to worry about everything. I have set up all the settings, and all you need to do now is to focus on your match. Yes, Riser-sama. Still, I will give you power and do your best to kill him. Diodora suddenly felt that he had gained a new power within his body, and his body was flushed with excitement due to this new power. I will finish your order perfectly, Riser-sama. I am waiting for your good news. Riser looked at the scenery through the window and thought that he had done what he could, and now let's see who was going to defeat whom. Meanwhile, Kryazari, George, and the others, who had woken up, felt confused as to why they stood in the middle of nowhere. But when they thought about Diodora's reminder, they knew that their plan to ambush Riser had failed, but it didn't matter as there was another chance in the future. Riser Phoenix. I will definitely avenge Cat Area. Kryazari shouted with a deafening roar. George, who saw this, could only shake his head and used his dimensional loss to return everyone to their headquarters, waiting for another chance in the future to kill Riser Lucifer. Chapter 282. Shit. The news about the calamity that happened in the Norse myths quickly spread to all the upper echelons of all the myths in the world. While the gods of the Norse myth and all who lived in these 9 worlds tried to hide this fact as they didn't want everyone to see their weakness, it was impossible for them to hide it, especially when Odin died, being killed by Loki. Even worse, Loki was the cause of everyone's disappearance. However, everyone knew that Loki should have joined the Chaos Brigade, hiding away and waiting for another chance to bring the Norse myth into another Ragnarok. It was also due to this that many gods, especially those who weren't good at fighting within the Norse myth, pressed Thor, who took the throne of the chief of gods from Odin, to gain the alliance of the devil, angels, and fallen angel as they needed to recuperate in the power of the alliance in case Loki and the Chaos Brigade once again. Thor and many of Odin's sons didn't deny the alliance. Instead, they knew they needed this alliance, but they were worried, with their current situation, that the alliance would take them seriously. Nevertheless, what happened to the Norse myth made many myths within the world realize the danger that came with the Chaos Brigade. However, there were still many who still scoffed at the Chaos Brigade, especially those gods who were good at fighting. Standing on top of many from the moment they were born gave them the confidence and arrogance that no one might be able to think of. Still, as the Chaos Brigade became famous, and many started to seek after them as they wished to join or destroy it, this terrorist organization hid once again, waiting for another chance to cause more chaos in this world. However, with what was happening within the Norse myth, there was one individual who panicked and frightened the most. Shit. It's dangerous. He is serious. I don't know how he was able to do it, but he is serious. He is going to kill me. No, he is going to kill all of us. Azazel panicked, especially when he found out Odin had been killed. While everyone thought the one who killed Odin was Loki, especially when Loki directly announced to everyone in the Norse myths that Loki was the one who killed Odin, Azazel knew that wasn't the case. In reality, it was that person who had killed Odin. However, Azazel didn't have proof. He also didn't even know how that person was able to kill Odin. Moreover, would anyone believe that Odin was killed by that person? No. Yet, more importantly, Azazel knew that it was about time he was about to be killed. It's over. Everything is over. I am going to die. If it were others, Azazel might not be so helpless, but facing that man, he knew that all the struggles were meaningless. Even if he made everyone follow him, nothing would happen. If there was a chance, whether it was 0.00001% probability, he wouldn't give up. However, it was 0%. Nothing could be done. Calm down. How could I calm down? Azazel sighed, wondering what he should do. He didn't care much about his life, but he knew that the moment he chose to become that person's enemy, he could only choose one thing that could be saved. Was it someone whom he thought was his son or his race? Azazel looked at the figure who worked with him and asked, "Can you defeat him?" "No." "Then, why are you still calm? He is at your house, you know." "Even so, what can I do?" "Azazel, I have set everything up. You don't need to worry." Azazel sighed and asked, "So we have to do this?" "We do, or else we will die. Lastly, can you entrust this piece to him?" Azazel fell in silence and nodded firmly. "I can." Well, that's true. But, as expected, the peace on his mind is different from our peace, and there is no doubt he is a dangerous element in this world. Azazel knew how reliable that person was, but at the same time, he also knew how dangerous that person was, especially when he was already labeled as an enemy. No, those who were labeled as enemies by that person would only have one fate, and that was to be killed. Even if that person had to involve many innocents, no one could escape from him. As for the reason why that person didn't kill them, it was because that person didn't want to leave any traces behind and use someone as a scapegoat, like how he used Vala to kill Surzek. But, is this plan really possible? We don't have any choices. We have to bet everything. Azazel closed his eyes. It was all or nothing. It was either that person or they who would live. There was no possibility of the two of them being at peace. Still, if possible, Azazel didn't want to do this. With the day being pressed, and when the time of the duel between him and his enemies would start, Reiser was as calm as ever. He didn't spend his time training since training was meaningless for him. It was like an exam student who had used their year for study, and when there was only one day before the exam, it was better for them to use it as a rest instead of using it to study as much as possible until the last moment. Reiser had done everything that he could do, and it was only time that could decide who would become the winner between them. Moreover, even if he couldn't win, he knew that he could run away, so why should he be worried? In this world, he might not be the strongest, but there was no doubt his ability to run away was the #1 strength, and he believed that no one could catch him unless he allowed them to do so. So, he was relatively calm and spent his time in the library of the Astaroth house since if he couldn't defeat his enemy, he could run away. After the incident with Diodora, Reiser decided to spend his time at the Astaroth house, learning everything that was collected by this family. With Diodora's permission, who could stop him? Still, with what had happened to the Norsemyth, Rossweiss decided to go back to check her house. Reiser didn't stop her and just told her to call him in case she needed help. Thank you, Reiser-sama. Staring at him with teary eyes, Rossweiss hugged him tightly. If this was something she was happy with, it was the fact that her family was okay, but many of her friends and acquaintances were affected and even died due to this Ragnarok. At that time, Reiser didn't do anything and just let her hug him. Nevertheless, no one thought that this incident was related to him among his women or his allies except for one. Do you have to kill them? Yeah? Kuroka, who had been following him quietly, finally talked. While many were clueless, she knew that the man she had chosen as a mate was dangerous and he might be the one who controlled all the terror in the world. But even if she knew about that, she never said anything and just endured everything until now. This time, Kuroka knew that something big must be happening, especially when Reiser told his peerage members along with her that the Alliance would use Diodora to become bait to eliminate the Chaos Brigade. This should also include all of her previous comrades. Do you think they will let me go if I let them go? Kuroka couldn't talk since she wasn't as naive as the others. Staying as a stray for so long, she had seen much darkness in the world, and she knew Reiser was so gentle. But even so, she still wanted to try since she knew how strong he was. But I will give you two choices. Reiser didn't let Kuroka talk and set an ultimatum. Stay by my side or leave. There is no other choice other than that. You don't mind me leaving, yeah? Kuroka asked sadly with tears. Reiser took a deep breath and said firmly, yes. No, yeah. I don't want to leave. Don't abandon me, yeah? Watching Kuroka, who hugged him tightly, Reiser didn't show much of a reaction to his expression and only said, then, you don't need to think about anything and just stay by my side. Kuroka knew that there was only one thing that she could choose in her life, whether it was him or the others, but in the end, she chose him since she knew he was the one who needed her the most. Only when they were immersed in their moment did a harsh shout reach into their ears. Who dares to do something shameful in this sacred library? 2x. Chapter 283. Something big. I am deeply sorry, Lucifer-sama. With a young woman as the lead, the others also followed, bowing down so deeply toward Reiser. Kuroka, who saw all of this, couldn't help but laugh. Still, facing Reiser's stare, she could only stop, but she couldn't control her laugh. She kept laughing hard, watching many people who kept bowing their heads as they had just interrupted them. Reiser gave up trying to stop Kuroka, but nevertheless, no one said anything, even if Kuroka laughed as they kept bowing down. Yet, this was normal since he exerted the power of Villain and easily conquered them with his aura. Among all of his abilities, there was no doubt Villain was convenient, especially to take care of the small fries. With this ability, no matter how many of his opponents, even if they brought an army, it was meaningless as the moment they were exposed to his aura. The thought of fighting had already disappeared before they passed out due to the difference in their powers. It was the same as the group in front of him, as they had already given up the moment they were exposed to his aura. "You are bullying them," Kuroka whispered. Riser stared at Kuroka with eyes that told her that he was going to bully her tonight. Kuroka didn't care about his gaze. Instead, she looked at the leader of this group with an interest. "She is a beauty. Aren't you interested in her?" Riser directly ignored this cat girl and said, "Stand up." "Yes." The young woman, who was scared and nervous, stood up shakily, but she didn't dare to meet Riser's eyes. It was also the same with the others, especially the guards, who did a bad job by not telling those who had entered about the presence of Riser. Still, Riser looked at the young woman and thought that her body was as good as Rias, which surprised him since he had never thought to meet someone similar to Rias. However, unlike Rias, her hair was long blonde with blue hair, and her appearance was rather stern, probably due to her personality. "You might be surprised since I am here, but I got permission from Diodora." "Diodora?" The young woman was surprised and also confused. "Why?" Hearing her low mutter, Riser chuckled. "Probably he wanted to curry a favor with me." "Ah, well, I am sorry again, Lucifer-sama." She bowed her head so low that her big breast bounced. Even in the underworld, Riser thought, the law of gravity was the same. Still, he was curious about who this young woman was. "You are. I am sorry for the late introduction." Like a young lady from an aristocratic house, she introduced herself. "My name is Latia Astaroth, and I am from the branch family of the Astaroth house." "I see." Riser nodded. "It's normal for you to get angry at me, then. If he was at Latia's place and found someone doing the deeds in his family's library, then naturally, you would be angry." "Ah, Latia was in grief, knowing that she had done something stupid. She knew if Lord Astaroth, Diodora, Ajuka, and even her parents knew what she had done, they would probably give her to Riser without hesitation. However, she didn't really mind though if that was what she needed to do. Riser might have married, but the name of the strongest devil in the world wasn't for nothing. Everyone knew that as long as someone got his semen and got these children, there was no doubt their children would become a powerhouse. At worst, they would be an ultimate class devil, which was as rare as a billionaire in the world. "Though you misunderstood us." Yes, I misunderstood you." Latia nodded. As for the rest, they just bowed down and never raised their heads. "Then, do you mind if I continue to read?" Riser asked. "Please, stay as much as you wish to, Lucifer-sama. Just call me Riser, okay?" "Then, Riser-sama." Latia still used the sama suffix to call him, but she showed a beautiful smile when she called his name. Nevertheless, there was no doubt his action of reading the secret information on the Astaroth house was something extremely rude. Yet who could stop him? Moreover, Riser also got permission from Diodora, and Latia also agreed with Diodora since if they could get on the good side of Riser by just lending a few books to him, then everything was good. The information on this library might be important, but it didn't mean that all of them could use it since not all the descendants of the Astaroth house could be as strong and as smart as Ajuka. There were also many failures, such as Diodora. In other words, this was a small price to gain the good side of Riser. "By the way, are you familiar with this library, Miss Astaroth?" "Please call me Latia, Riser-sama." "Then, Latia, let me ask you again whether you are familiar with this place since Diodora never entered this place from what he told me." Latia sighed helplessly toward the heir of the Astaroth house, but there was nothing she could do since Diodora was Ajuka's little brother. Even if Diodora was SC*M, his father and older brother gave him enough qualifications to become the head of the Astaroth house. Even if she was dissatisfied, there was nothing she could do since she was nothing but just from a branch family. "Please let me be your guide here, Riser-sama." Latia offered her help without hesitation. "Then, thank you." Riser didn't reject Latia's offer since this way was faster. The two talked to each other amiably, and it was easy to tell that they liked each other. Kuroka looked at the two, then snorted, and decided to take a nap since a book would make her sleepy. Moreover, she knew that she needed to build her stamina for her punishment tonight. As Riser went to read all the books on the Astaroth house, everything was peaceful. While Rossweiss hadn't returned, everything was as usual and nothing changed. If something had changed, it was at how Diodora was keen to train, and Latia was always by his side when he stayed in the library. Naturally, when he was in the library, he wasn't alone as the women around him kept changing, but Latia never said anything. Still, during this moment, his wife, Sona, went on the match against Sikvaria Agars, the heiress of the Agaris house. Naturally, the winner between them was Sona, as Sikvaria was unable to do anything against Sona. Frankly, there was no doubt the power of Agar's house was strong since they had the power to control the time. During the match, Latia told him that due to her mother's heritage, she also gained the power of time, like from the Agar's house. However, facing Sona's skillful water manipulation, nothing could be done. With her mirage, deadly swordsmanship, strategy, and many other things, she was simply the most shining young generation among the six youths. Naturally, Sona wasn't the only one, as Sarorg also showed his power by making the new heir of the Glaciolabalus traumatized and holed up inside the room. It was also due to this accident that Iriuka became the new heiress of the Glaciolabalus, causing her to share this news with him as soon as it was confirmed. However, while Riser was happy about Iriuka, who had become the new heiress of the Glaciolabalus house, the day Rias would have her raiding game against Diodora started. On the day of the match, Diodora never looked at Rias but stared at Asia lustfully, then at Issei dangerously, but soon, he quickly erased those expressions and changed them into his usual gentle smile. Whether Asia or Issei, they became uneasy in front of Diodora's gaze. "Asia, I will definitely show my love to you," Diodora said softly. "Bastard." Issei glared angrily at Diodora, who kept trying to court Asia, but as usual, Diodora ignored him, which made him even angrier. "Let's win." Rias ignored Diodora since he had never done real harm, and once again, she raised the spirit of her peerage members and vowed that she would win this match. Yes, Bucho. Their previous match against Sona was a failure, but this time, they were going to become the winner. Meanwhile, Riser, who was in the VIP room with his wife, women, and his acquaintances, along with all the leaders of various factions, watched the match that was about to be held. However, Riser and those leaders knew that their real purpose wasn't to watch the match between Rias and Diodora. "Riser-kun, it's the time," Ajuka reminded Riser quietly. "Okay." Riser nodded calmly. "Dear." Sona looked at Riser with confusion. "Wait here for me." Riser patted his wife's shoulder and then left along with all the leaders chosen for this war. Unlike others who were oblivious, Riser knew something big was about to begin. Chapter 284. Sunera. Rias, Issei, and everyone were determined to beat the shit out of Diodora. At this moment, their spirits were blazing as they were ready to fight, but when they were teleported into the field where their raiding game would be held. The field where they arrived was in the shape of a spacious space. It was lined up with thick pillars, and the ground was made from rocks. When they looked around, they also noticed a big entrance to an enormous shrine in the distance. The shrine was similar to those that appeared in the Greek myth, but there were no broken parts, as if it had just been built recently. The sky was white, and this was where they stood. However, Rias felt something weird. "This is weird." When she said so, the others also felt the same, but soon they noticed many lights appeared and surrounded them. There was no doubt it was a magic circle for a teleportation, but it isn't the symbol of Astaroth. Whether it was Kaneko, Kiba, or Akino, they quickly prepared themselves. None of the magic circles are similar. Except, they're all devils. But if my memory is correct, when Rias released a dangerous crimson aura, she saw many devils had surrounded them, glaring at them, and from their numbers alone, they easily reached thousands of them. She took a deep breath and said, "Judging from their magic circles, they are affiliated with the old malfaction of Chaos Brigade." Issei, who had been confused, was startled. "Ha ha ha, it's the sister of the loser Lucifer. Let's hurry up and kill her." "Well, don't be in a hurry. Why don't we enjoy them for a while?" Unlike before, Rias' status was no longer scary as she was just the heiress of the Grimry house. Rias, whose temper wasn't good, was already enraged. No, even if one had a good temper, it was impossible for them to stay calm in front of such a confrontation. You should be prepared to be killed by him. Rias had decided to kill all of them without mercy, but... Kaya. A scream. This voice also belongs to Asia. Issei panicked when he saw Asia had disappeared. "Issei-san." The voice came from above, and when Issei looked up, he saw Diodora, who was carrying Asia with a lewd laugh. "Hey, Rias Grimmery and Red Dragon Emperor. I will take Asia Argento with me." "Let go of Asia, you shit. Coward. And what is the meaning of this? Aren't we supposed to play the game?" Diodora smiled evilly and laughed, but he wouldn't expose everything. "Are you dumb? This isn't a game? All of you will die here by them. Agents of the Chaos Brigade. No matter how powerful all of you are, you won't be able to take on many high-class devils and middle-class devils, right? Ha ha ha, so die. Perish right away." Rias glared at Diodora. "Are you telling me you are connected to the Chaos Brigade? ASC*M, and you even defiled the game. so death would be fitting for you. More than that, you try to take away my adorable Asia away from me. However, Diodora was too lazy to talk with Rias. He only yawned when Rias talked. Then when her words were over, he said, well, just try to fight them. If you can stay alive, then come to the shrine since I am waiting for you. Meanwhile, I will enjoy Asia. As he licked his lips, feeling excited due to Asia's cry, he hurriedly left by using the teleportation. However, how could they watch Asia be taken by Diodora? I won't let you. Lightning struck down where Diodora stood, but it was too late as Diodora had disappeared. Asia Awaia. Issei cried out for Asia, but he couldn't get a reply as Asia had disappeared. Like before, he couldn't protect Asia. Issei-kun, stay calm. We need to take care of the enemies right in front of us first. Let's go and save Asia-san after that. Kiba quickly said. To be honest, they weren't sure whether they could stay alive being surrounded by so many powerful devils. However, Issei didn't care about any of that. His heart was filled with rage as he would never forgive Diodora. Yet, those from the Cow's Brigade wouldn't give them mercy, and all of them had already prepared their attacks, causing Rias and the others to be nervous. Even Kaneko and Akino, who had been trained by Riser, weren't sure whether they could defeat so many powerful devils, and they hoped for him to save them. Darling, Riser-sama. Even Rias also wished for a miracle to happen, and Riser came to save them since he was the one who could save them. Nevertheless, Issei was in shock when he heard Rias' expression, but suddenly he felt a shudder. Not only Issei but all the devils that affiliated with the Cow's Brigade felt their beings were so cold that they started being dangerous beings. As expected, at that moment, a hand suddenly emerged from the space, tearing the space apart before he emerged in front of everyone. Darling, Riser-sama. Riser. When they saw Riser, who suddenly appeared, all of them were filled with hope. Even Issei, who hated Riser incredibly, also felt relief, but at that moment, he looked in the direction of the shrine and directly ran into that place. Issei. Rias scolded Issei for suddenly running in the direction of the shrine. She knew that Issei was worried about Asia, but there was something that one should do or not, right? Especially when Riser came to save all of them. Moreover, did Issei not know how dangerous it was to run by himself? However, all the enemies were stunned by Riser's aura, especially when his villain was activated. In front of his aura, all the beings that were weaker than him would have no power to fight back and would quickly give up. If there was a weaker being who could still have the will to fight him, it would be those who were related to the main protagonists or had a certain role within the story. However, the thousands of devils in front of him definitely weren't part of the story. Rias, you should go back. I will handle this. What about Issei and Asia? Rias quickly asked. Riser didn't bother to say anything. Kaneko and Akino didn't say anything, but while they didn't care about Issei, they were worried about Asia. Gasper and Kiba said nothing, but their eyes occasionally glanced toward the direction of the shrine as they were worried about Issei. Rias fell in silence, then said, I can't leave. I need to save them. They are my cute servants, after all. You might lose your life, you know? Even so? Then, go. I will handle this place. Rias smiled and leaped into Riser, ready to kiss him, but Riser directly pushed her away and didn't allow her to kiss him. Why didn't you let me kiss you? Should I throw you into the enemies now? Rias pursed her lips and understood what type of man Riser was. Sundara. There was no doubt Riser was this type of guy. Riser's mouth might be dishonest, but his body was definitely honest. While Riser wasn't sure what this crazy girl was thinking, he could only scold her. Hurry up. You might let him die there. Thank you. I will give you my virginity to you later. While Kaneko and Akino only rolled their eyes, Gasper and Kiba sighed and felt relief, for Issei had already left since they were sure Issei's heart wouldn't be able to take it if he heard Rias' words. However, whether Kiba or Gasper, they didn't stop Rias' advance toward Riser since they knew this was the best for the Grimmery house. Rias, wait. What's wrong? Be careful of Azazel. Rias was stunned in place, but then her face showed determination, and she nodded. I will. Watching them leave, Riser hasn't said anything since after this. Everything would be over. Nevertheless, as Riser and Rias seemed to flirt with each other, the Cow's Brigade was all in silence, and no one seemed ready to talk until... Humph. A figure suddenly appeared in front of all the members of the Cow's Brigade. What a coward. How could you cower in fear facing the fake Lucifer? Cruzri Asmodeus. There was no doubt this man had the greatest hatred toward Riser, especially when his lover was killed by Riser. Now, it's time to kill Al. Before Cruzri finished his words, his body suddenly split in half, and he died. Just like that, the descendant of the original Mao died. Riser only moved his finger slightly, using the power Kama no Mi, killing Cruzri instantly with the blade of wind with ease. He looked at all of them and asked, So, do you want to fight? Everyone. What should they do? Was it possible for them to return and follow Riser? Yet. Azure right. Thousands of gigantic wind blades came and rained on them as they killed all of them without mercy. As expected, Riser Lucifer was as tough as ever. However, he slowed down his speed and wasn't in a hurry, since if he defeated them so fast, it would be hard for a certain someone to be killed. Chapter 285. Ruthless. What's happening? What's wrong? Sona, who saw the change in the field, quickly looked at Riser's peerage members as she knew they must have been told by Riser. Sona-sama, please calm down. Riser-sama will solve all the problems. As long as Riser's name was talked about, everyone became calm as he had never made them disappointed. Moreover, all of them knew the power of Riser, and they knew in front of Riser, all of the opponent's power was meaningless. This showed how much confidence they had in him. Still, when Yubaluna, Riser's queen, explained to everyone what the higher-up was planning, Sona and the rest felt conflicted. Naturally, as his queen, she couldn't let everyone have a bad impression of him. Moreover, she knew that this plan was initiated by Ajuka, and many also agreed. If Riser rejected this idea, then wouldn't he antagonize the others? While they believed Riser was strong, Ajuka wasn't weak. They knew that it was better for Riser to have a good relationship with Ajuka instead of a bad one. Nevertheless, everything started from Ajuka's intense desire for revenge, and if Rias died, then it was all due to Ajuka. However, there was nothing they could do, and they could only wait, leaving the rest to Riser, the other Maus, and the armies that supported them in this war. Meanwhile, Rias, who knew about everything, was once again left in anger, especially when she knew that she was used as bait by everyone to take down the Chaos Brigade. She was nothing but a tool. Knowing this, it would be impossible for her to feel angry, especially toward Azazel and Ajuka. She wasn't sure why. The two of them seemed to be trying to sow discord between her and Riser. However, she wasn't going to buy their lies, and it was the same with Aquino and Kaneko. Still, Kiba and Gasper hesitated, looking at Rias, before they kept in silence since they knew everything was far more complicated than they had thought, and they, who were just small characters and servants of the Grimmery, could only follow the words of their master. Frankly, if they were asked about their feelings, Kiba and Gasper were angry for being used as bait, but with their horrible childhood, this was nothing, especially when they still had hope. However, Issei was different. Issei was furious. Why should you get Asia involved? Issei didn't even care if Riser had helped him before and only thought about the cause of everything laid on Riser. Issei, watch your mouth. Ria scolded Issei coldly. Issei was startled and even flinched, but at the same time, he was also angry. However, anyway, we should save Asia first. Aquino reminded everyone in a hurry. When those words fell, no one argued, and they all went to the shrine, fighting Diodora, who had been waiting for them. Even though Diodora wished to open his pants and take down Asia, he knew that he needed to finish his mission. Moreover, what greatly relieved him was that his boss didn't care much about Asia. Instead, it seemed his boss was more interested in the women of others. As expected of his boss, as evil as ever, Diodora thought. However, Diodora wouldn't say those words out loud since his purpose was to kill Issei. So the moment Issei came, there was no need for mercy, and he used his everything, especially when the faster he killed Issei, the greater his reward was. It was also the reason why Diodora didn't touch Asia first, since he waited for Issei to come to the church. Red Dragon Emperor. Diodora created a number of missiles created by demonic energy, then increased their speed with haste, the power lent by his boss. He increased the speed of his attacks and bombarded Issei without mercy. Issei-kun. Issei. Issei-senpai. Boom, boom, boom. The impact of the explosion was so huge that it pushed everyone away. Moreover, when Rias and the others wanted to help, Diodora's peerage members quickly stopped them. Yet what stunned them was that Diodora's peerage members never seemed to intend to fight them. Instead, they harassed, slowed, stopped, and even sealed them, trying to stop them from reaching Issei. However, Issei never disappointed everyone. In the face of the crisis, he would become stronger. I won't let you shit. I will save Asia. Asia, wait for me. Issei-san. Somehow, Asia also woke up and used the power of healing on Issei, healing him and giving him power. Yet, even so, it was impossible to defeat Diodora. Diodora's speed was too fast. Unlike the Chaos Brigade, who used him, Diodora knew that his boss really cared about him, especially when his boss taught him how to use haste. Not only could this ability increase his speed, his reaction, attack, and thinking, but all of those things increased and became faster. His purpose was only one, and that was to kill Issei. Facing such an opponent, Issei was helpless and kept being beaten, but as expected, as the protagonist, he would never be defeated. Balance Breaker. Illegal move Triana. Cardinal Crimson Promotion. Like Valley, who gained a hidden power of Albion, Issei's strength was also promoted to an outrageous level. At this moment, his crimson-colored armor shone brightly like a blazing flame. The devil wings on his back somehow became dragon-like as he emitted a dangerous aura. This was the power that he had gained in his strongest state. Cardinal Crimson Promotion. By using the combination of Balance Breaker, the strongest state of the Sacred Gear, along with all three Evil Pieces traits, making it the most balanced and powerful form of Issei's scale mail. At this moment, no one could defeat Issei. Issei was the strongest in this place. Yet, even if Issei was strong, Diodora was faster. Aergek, I will kill you, bastard. I am the one who is going to kill you first. The two of them wished to kill each other, and no one was holding back. Yet, the protagonist had always become the winner. I will kill you, Diodora. Frankly, if it was the previous Diodora, he would be afraid, but now it was different, especially when his mind was affected by his boss. Even if he was killed, he would kill this bastard no matter what, so facing this attack, he didn't dodge and just accepted it. Asterisk. Issei, who didn't hold back directly, killed Diodora. Issei. While Gasper, Asia, and Kiba were happy, Rias, Aquino, and Kaneko knew that the situation had become complicated, especially when Diodora, the heir of the Astaroth house, was killed. Even if Diodora was still affiliated with the Chaos Brigade, he was still someone who shouldn't be killed by Issei. Issei also felt relief when he killed Diodora. It might be his first time to kill, but he definitely didn't regret his action. Only, it hurts. Issei looked at his chest and saw that a dagger was stabbed into his body. When the battle was over, the adrenaline in his body also disappeared, so he quickly realized the pain in his body. Aergek. At that moment, Issei felt an indescribable pain, like his body was burnt. It's time. When Riser killed Shalba Beelzebub, the last stupid trio in the old Satan faction, he knew that it was time for Issei to die, and he thought to take boosted gear from Issei since he wanted to torment Drake and reduce this stupid dragon as his tool. Should we go to help Rias-chan now, Riser-chan? Seraphal asked. Along with Seraphal, there was even Michael, Barakiel, Falbium, and many others. Naturally, not everyone was brought into this war against the Chaos Brigade since some of them were needed to protect the civilians in case there were other members of the Chaos Brigade. Sure, Riser didn't have any hesitation since it was the time, but his steps suddenly stopped as he looked at the sky in disbelief. The others also stopped as if they felt something incredible. A gigantic magic circle suddenly appeared, and they knew that it was used for teleportation, but the staggering size frightened all of them. Still, more importantly, the power, aura, and being that came from that magic circle frightened all of them. The process of the teleportation wasn't long, and at that moment, everyone saw a figure that came out from the magic circle. With a gigantic body reaching 100 meters, a red western dragon appeared before them. Still, compared to Riser, who could become tens of kilometers in size, the size of this dragon was nothing. Yet, the real problem was the identity of this dragon. Ruruaror. The space cracked, and everyone was trembling in a daze as their brain shut down. The strongest being in this world. The Great Red. This most powerful being appeared before them. Chapter 286, Clap. We won, Ajuka said calmly as he looked into the distance. Isn't it a bit too much? Sun Wukong scratched his head, thinking that the underworld would be destroyed. He looked at Ajuka and asked, what if the underworld is destroyed? It's okay. Ajuka was as calm as ever. Even if the space was created by dimensional loss that trapped Rias and the others before cracking, showing the figure of terror that was noticed by all the beings in the underworld, nothing even fazed him. Even if the underworld is destroyed, as long as some of us exist, there is nothing to worry about. Watching how callous and cold Ajuka was toward everything, especially when Sun Wukong saw the aura of Great Red that made him wish to run away as soon as possible, he knew that he definitely couldn't provoke Ajuka as this guy was crazy. Yes, Ajuka was crazy. The moment he had lost Surzek, he didn't care about anything, and his goal had always been to bring those who had killed his beloved friend to the eternal darkness. At this moment, no one said anything, and everyone could only feel a chill toward Ajuka's methods. Dragon summoning. By using this technique, Ajuka summoned the Great Red into the underworld to face his greatest hatred. As someone with one of the greatest minds in history, the world, or even all beings, Ajuka wasn't stupid, and the death of Surzek must be related to Riser. Even though he didn't know how Riser could make Vala kill Surzek or let Surzek be killed by Vala, he knew that Riser must have a power that made him capable of making an absolute order. Frankly, Ajuka wouldn't want to do this, and he waited for the last moment until he saw how Diodora fought with everything and even let himself be killed to kill Issei. When he saw all of this, he had confirmed that Riser was behind everything. When Surzek and many others died, Riser gained glory and everything. How would Ajuka allow that? Nevertheless, Ajuka knew that he wasn't Riser's opponent. His ability, Kankara Formula, an ability to manipulate the phenomena that occur in the world by using his demonic powers to fill in the calculations of the natural phenomena, might be powerful. Riser was definitely his nemesis. Even though Ajuka could control all the phenomena, it was meaningless in front of Riser's immortal body and his ever-stronger power that continuously became stronger as Riser was hurt. Facing someone whose body was in perpetual motion, Ajuka knew that anything he would do was meaningless, so he decided to go crazy by summoning the Great Red. Anyway, if he didn't do something, he would die, so why shouldn't he kill Riser first? Naturally, summoning the Great Red wasn't as easy as it seemed, especially when several Dragon Kings were needed to summon this most powerful being in the world. If it was the others, it might be difficult, but not for Ajuka, especially when he got help from Sun Wukong and Azazel. Yes, the two of them had decided to help Ajuka. However, they knew that they might not be able to escape from Riser, especially when they knew the destruction of the Norse myth and the death of Odin were all caused by Riser. The three of them didn't hesitate to shake their hands. Azazel aside, Ajuka returned Biko to Sun Wukong. Even if Biko was tortured, Sun Wukong didn't care as much as he thought that it could become a lesson for Biko. Moreover, as his descendants, Biko's body had always been resilient and tough. Like he, who could still be alive after receiving so many tortures, Biko was the same. While Biko might be weaker than him, there was no doubt that Biko was stronger than all of his descendants and matched him. Still, if it was before, Sun Wukong might beat the shit and even try to beat Ajuka, but after his journey to the west with Tang Sanzang, his personality also subtly changed. And he knew that there was something that he couldn't be made into an enemy like Ajuka, who stood by his side. However, even if Biko was tortured, Biko wasn't killed. For that, it was enough to make an alliance with Ajuka on the spot. Now, how could their combination summon the Great Red? It was all due to the fact that the three of them had a relationship with the Great King. Ajuka had a relationship with Tiamat, Azazel had a relationship with Fafnir, and Sun Wukong had a relationship with Yunlong. It was also because of this the three Dragon Kings also stood by their sides, but unlike them, they didn't say anything and just stared at the Great Red in the distance in a daze. Sun Wukong thought that they might also invite Tannin, but Ajuka and Azazel stopped him since Tannin was a variable element, and they definitely didn't want to involve that stupid dragon, especially when Riser's power to manipulate someone was confirmed. Nevertheless, Sun Wukong was amazed by the power of the Great Red since he was sure that even Buddha and all the Chinese myth, along with Hindu myth, would be unable to do anything against this being. Tiamat, who had been worried, asked, "What will you do if he runs away?" "He won't," Azazel answered without hesitation. He isn't that type of guy, especially when his family are involved. There was a tinge of regret in his heart, but he knew since he had made this decision, there was no room for regret, and they had to succeed, or else. "That's right, Tiamat." Ajuka nodded. "He won't run away. Facing this being, I am sure he will fight it and die beautifully. Like Riser, he wouldn't tarnish Riser's reputation and let him die in glory. As for defeating the Great Red, no one in this place thought that Riser was capable of such a feat. Nevertheless, the Great Red, who was summoned forcefully, was furious, but strangely enough, he suddenly fell into silence before his aura blazed even stronger. At this moment, no one could even say anything. Their bodies froze in fear as they widened their eyes, unable to do anything when the death was approaching. Even if the Great Red wasn't so massive that everyone in the underworld could see it, his aura was felt by every being that existed. Yet, no one ever thought to run away since there was nothing that they could do, and every resistance was pointless since death was absolute when this being was in front of them. The Great Red also didn't say much nonsense and opened his mouth, gathering a large amount of energy, ready to blast everything away. Yet, "Protect yourselves." His voice was as calm as ever. At that moment, no one could forget what they had seen. Riser, their Lucifer, suddenly became so enormous that his head was above the cloud. Riser used the command T, making his body as huge as half of Olympus Mons. The world stood still, and their eyes widened as they were shocked by his enormous size. Yet, Riser didn't even care about everyone since he knew the death and life of everyone was on his hands. So when the Great Red was about to destroy everything, Riser clapped it like he killed a mosquito. Boo! Chapter 287, Homework. When one clapped their hands, they would create a clapping sound. However, when someone with a height of 10,000 meters clapped his hands, it created a catastrophe. The sound of his clapping hands was as loud as the explosion of the nuclear bomb, or even more. It was so deafening that it eclipsed everything. If there was something that many were grateful about, Riser still cared about them and used his wind manipulation to block the noise so most of them wouldn't die due to the impact of his clapping hands. Yet, the Great Red wasn't a pushover. The blast of energy in its mouth blasted Riser's hands, destroying them so that even Riser's bones could be seen. However, everything was healed instantly. Riser wasn't a phoenix for nothing, after all. Yet, this also made him frown. Still, as the Great Red was furious about being treated like this, Riser directly slammed this beast into the ground. Boom. With his physical ability, demonic power, and size, the impact of this slam was enough to ruin everything within the vicinity. Fortunately, Riser had already teleported Rias and the others away. At this moment, no one could join their fights, and they could only watch everything in the distance in a daze. After all, had they ever thought Riser would be this strong? The Great Red will become the winner, right? Yulong, the youngest and the cowardly Dragon King, asked timidly when he saw the gigantic Riser, who brutally fought the Great Red. Gulp. If Riser became the winner, then. Yet, Ajuka reassured them. It's going to be okay. There is no way for the Great Red to be defeated so easily. Even if he was surprised by Riser's power, he knew the Great Red wasn't an opponent that could be defeated so easily. However, at that moment, no one noticed a small figure that observed the fight between Riser and the Great Red from a distance. As the Great Red sunk and slammed into the ground, Riser never intended to stop there since he knew this opponent wasn't like any opponents that he had ever faced, especially when this opponent was quite tricky. There wasn't any room for hesitation, and even if he might the surroundings, he had to kill this beast. Summoning his Starbuster Star Blaster, the small blade on his hand grew twice as gigantic as his body. Riser breathed deeply, and his body grew stronger several times as he activated all the items that he had kept. Even though his insides were bleeding and wounded due to the overflow of all the power that grew within his body, it didn't matter, as he would keep healing. Still, as he raised his blazing red blade, he shouted, "Crimson Conquest." The gigantic blazing blade swung in the direction of the Great Red. There was no destruction. There was no explosion. Only the world lost its color as this blade focused on the concept of cutting. When everything was done, the space split along with the earth, creating a deep gulf that might reach into the bottomless abyss. Everyone was still in a daze, but when they saw Riser return to his normal size, many also started to wake up. When? Has Riser-kun won? Riser-sama. Those who were strong quickly woke up as their hearts filled with excitement when they thought Riser had won against the strongest being in the world. Dear Riser-sama. Riser. Whether it was Sona, Rias, his women, his family, acquaintances, or those who were following him, they were all excited when they saw his victory. Riser had won. He won against the strongest being in the world. When they thought about his victory, they were flushed with excitement as they thought that their race was invincible as long as Riser was by their side. Yet, everyone became silent once again as a wave of terror swallowed the underworld once again. The Great Red that was cut by Riser suddenly appeared once again in the sky, high above, as everything in its surroundings crumbled due to the energy emitted from its body. Moreover, once again, it also gathered an enormous amount of energy within its mouth, which was enough to destroy this world, the underworld. At this moment, it was only a time before all of them died. No one could stay alive from this disaster. Everyone would die, and no one would remain within the underworld. Watching this, Riser let out a helpless sigh as he put down his blade. He knew he had underestimated the Great Red. Facing this being, his feeling was like those who had been killed by him before they died. Everything was meaningless, and it was pointless to fight it. Everyone watched his actions, but no words came out of their mouths since they knew everything was hopeless. Nevertheless, Riser could run away and leave everyone behind. Moreover, his power from Wappa Wappa no Mi allowed him to save those who were related to him and teleported them to the human world. Yet, Riser closed his eyes before he made up his mind. One-chan. Eh? Seraphal, whose spirit was crushed by the Great Red's might, woke up due to Riser's voice. Come closer. What's wrong? She approached him and felt confused, but all of a sudden, she was kissed. Riser took Seraphal's lips greedily and ignored the shock in his surroundings before pushing her away. W.H. Seraphal, who had been in a daze and enjoyed that kiss, was startled, and at the same time, she got a bad premonition. Falbium. Michael. Barricule. Hold her no matter what. The three weren't sure, but they followed Riser's orders and stopped Seraphal. Let me go. I will kill all of you if you don't let go of me. Falbium. Michael. Barricule. I will kill you if you don't let go of me. I will kill you, all of you. I will kill you. Seraphal was mad, completely crazy, and used everything she could to attack them so she could reach Riser. However, the three of them didn't even flinch and tried their best to stop Seraphal. Even if Seraphal was a malclass of devil, the three of them weren't weak, and with Riser's entrustment, they knew this was the only thing they could do. Despite facing Seraphal's bombardment, the three were full of injuries, but they kept her in a place no matter what. Don't go, Riser-chan. I beg you. I beg you. Don't go. Seraphal kept screaming, hoping to hear from him, but Riser had made up his mind. Riser glanced at the distance before he looked at the Great Red again. He took a deep breath and made up his mind. Hey, system. Sup. While Riser was speechless, he also couldn't help but sigh helplessly. Say, if I went against this big guy, I'll get the rewards, right? Of course, so don't die, okay? Naturally. Riser then looked at Seraphal for the last time and smiled. Tell everyone that I am sorry. Nuu. Yet, Riser had made up his mind. Duelist. At that moment, A black hole emerged within the space and swallowed Riser and also the Great Red that was about to destroy the underworld along with its attacks. Then, what was left was just silence as they saw Riser and the Great Red completely disappear from this world. Ajuka, Azazel, and the others stared into the distance and fell into silence. With this, everything was over, right? Yet, before Riser left, he didn't forget to finish his homework. Chapter 288. Fight to Death. 3 days had passed after that incident, but even so, it still couldn't erase the depression within the underworld. Unlike when Surzek passed away, there was an existence that brought them hope, but this time, such an existence didn't exist. Yet, even so, unlike Surzek, who was forgotten, everyone firmly remembered his figure. Even if they wanted to forget him, it was impossible, especially with how enormous his size was and how powerful his opponent was. However, in front of such a nightmare, someone still faced that beast courageously. Naturally, many were inspired by him and wished to become like him, yet when they thought he was no longer beside them, they just couldn't regain the spirit. His warmth and presence, they lost them. What's even worse is that after this incident, Tannen and his race went on a rampage. He went from one place to another, killing and destroying everything, especially the domain of the Grimoire. It's all your fault. Your fault, Surzek. I will kill all of the Grimoire. Roaring such an enraged voice, Tannen went on a rampage. He didn't care about anything, and it was as if he had become a mindless animal. Yet, even if he became mindless, his power showed everyone why he was called the Dragon King. Facing this brutal attack, the Grimoire house was in a panic, yet even so, they were unable to do anything facing Tannen. Even worse, all of Surzek's peerage members died due to Tannen's brutality, and Lord Grimoire was gravely injured. There was nothing that the Grimoire house could do, and they could only ask for help, especially from the Malclass of Devil. Naturally, no one could stay silent as they didn't want many devils to die, so Falbium, with the help of Michael and Barrakiel, came to kill Tannen. Unfortunately, even if they could push Tannen away, they weren't able to kill Tannen, and Tannen quickly ran away and attacked the other areas from the Belial and those who were close to the area where the Grimoire domain was located. Nevertheless, it didn't mean that the Alliance was helpless as they could take down Tannen's dragon armies, yet they were powerless in facing Tannen. Tannen might only be within the top 10 of the rating game, but if he fought seriously, without caring about anything, at this moment, in the devil world except for Ajuka, no one could stop it. Then, where was Ajuka? Whenever Ajuka was around, Tannen would quickly leave and didn't even try to fight the current strongest Mal. This is what troubled Ajuka, as speed wasn't his strong point, so he could only helplessly try to follow Tannen. It was also due to Tannen's brutality and cunningness that many funerals happened in the underworld. In the Grimoire domain, especially since there were many who had died, including Hyadu Issei, the pawn of Rias Grimoire. When Asia heard of Issei's death, she passed out and was unable to believe it before she accepted it since there was nothing she could do, especially when everyone was still in a crisis and they needed her help during this crisis. Kiba and Gasper were also affected, but there was something that they needed to do since the Grimoire domain was really in need of help. Yet, during this crisis, Rias, Aquino, and Kaneko were unable to help. However, no one forced them, especially when they knew what was happening. Their eyes were dead, especially after that day. Riser disappeared. While many knew inwardly that person might not even exist anymore, no one dared to say it. They would receive the anger of Serafal, the Citri House, the Phoenix House, and many others. There was no way for Riser to pass away. Yet, when they thought about the opponent Riser fought, they just didn't have the confidence to say so. On that day, everyone was clear since there were many who watched what was happening. When the underworld was about to be destroyed, Riser used a certain technique that swallowed him and the Great Red. While they weren't sure what kind of technique Lucifer had used, they knew he had sacrificed himself for everyone. They wanted to believe Lucifer was invincible, but when they thought about his opponent, once again, they just couldn't believe it. Even if they believed so, especially when the Phoenix was famous for their immortality, they knew that it might take an eternity for him to return. Moreover, the faction created by Riser was as strong as ever since their links interlinked together with various interests, loyalty, and many others that linked them together. Even if he had disappeared, his power wouldn't disappear, as no one would let this power disappear since everyone's interests were linked together. More importantly, Serafal was still living well. Even though among the four Mao, her strength might not be the strongest, she was still stronger than the majority of the devils. Lastly, after that day, she was crueler, and her stupid, cute face disappeared. Yet, among all of those people, the one with the most complicated thought was Azazel since he was helpless at that moment. Even though Riser disappeared, his position didn't change, and he was still at the bottom, especially when the Grigori changed under the previous lead of Riser. Even if Riser had disappeared, he wouldn't let Azazel have a comfortable life. Moreover, Azazel knew that the danger that Vala faced hadn't completely disappeared, especially when he knew that if Ajuka wasn't busy with the matter of the Astaroth house and also the rampage of Tannen, Ajuka would come to target him to get his hand on Vali. Did Vala think that he could stay and live well after killing Surzek? Azazel wished for that fantasy to happen, but he knew that it was impossible. Yet, he knew that he needed to stop this, especially when he knew how weakened this alliance had become. If Issei was still alive, then there was no doubt that he was the best person to become the link to gather all the alliances. However, even if Riser disappeared, he wouldn't let anyone who bothered him live well. It's really troublesome to become his enemy. Azazel sighed helplessly. What about killing Ajuka so Vala could be accepted by everyone? Sometimes, such a thought crossed Azazel's mind, but could he even kill a mad devil who dared to summon the Great Red for his revenge? Riser might be powerful and all, but his thought was still rigid and gentle. However, Ajuka is different as he is completely cold and callous, especially when he could even sacrifice his little brother and even the reputation of his house for his revenge. Facing an enemy that didn't care about anything else except for revenge, Azazel was completely helpless. What about Riser? Azazel hadn't thought too much since Riser had died. Even if Riser didn't die, it would be impossible for Riser to return so quickly since he knew that in this world, the dragon was invincible. However, he had to say, there was no way for Riser to be forgotten, especially when everyone saw his last heroic act. Azazel closed his eyes and sighed, feeling quite regretful, before stopping his thoughts since he knew he needed to move on. He thought about how to face the next danger that came, especially when the fallen angel was also affected by Tannin. Yet, Riser didn't disappear. He was in a different space, fighting the Great Red. Only, he really did die during this fight. Chapter 289, Devour. Duelist. It was an ability that allowed him to lock himself with the enemy in a separate space until the winner between them was determined. There was no doubt that it was a convenient ability, especially when most of his abilities could destroy the environment. However, with this ability, there was no need for him to worry about the destruction of the environment and uses everything to fight since he was in a separate space and only the victor could leave. While it wasn't his first time using this ability since he had also tried it on the criminals and the bad guys, it was his first time fighting such a powerful being. The Great Red. The strongest being in the world. Even the god of the Bible, Surzek, 2 heavenly dragons, and those famous gods in the world were nothing in front of his existence. Nevertheless, Riser is confident about fighting it, especially when he is immortal and has the ruler. The ability to reverse all the magical attacks and power effects used against him into healing and fortification. With this ability, he was invincible. That should be the case, but the Great Red was a tricky opponent, especially when this thing could control his mind, forcing him to stop using the ruler. Riser might have had a psychic resistance, giving him the power and will to resist all the attacks that related to physics, yet it didn't mean he was immune to such an attack. Facing the mind manipulation of the strongest being, even if he tried to resist, he could do nothing, so in the end, he could only rely on all of his passive abilities to resist. Yet, he was helpless. Riser wasn't sure how many times he had died before he was revived. During these 3 days, he had died so many times that he didn't even bother to count it. Riser believed that he might be able to destroy the Earth, but he needed to use his everything. However, the Great Red was different. If he wanted to, he could destroy the planet casually. Moreover, as the Dragon of the Dream, he had the ability to manipulate the dream, so any damage he had received would disappear as if it were a dream. He could even see the future, dodging an attack skillfully, and even worse, he almost had an unlimited amount of energy. Facing such an opponent, even if he used his everything, what could he do? Moreover, his mind was always affected, and he was forced to harm himself. If Riser didn't have the ability of Crisis, which made him get stronger as he was hurt, and also the eating the Tori Tori no Mi model, Phoenix, he knew that there was nothing he could do except give up. Yet, he didn't give up and kept fighting. However, he stopped thinking and kept fighting like a mindless beast who only thought of ravaging and killing the enemy in front of him, since if he thought of something, his opponent would control his mind again. The Great Red was also enraged and tried to kill Riser no matter what the method was, yet no matter how many times it tried to kill Riser, this cockroach kept standing up. At this moment, the two of them lost their minds, and no one cared about anything, only fighting until one of them died. Frankly, if Riser didn't think about his family outside and the hatred he had for those who had plotted against him, he might give up since living was too painful. He might be able to get stronger as he was hurt, and he also could be reborn even if he was dead, but it didn't mean he was immune to the pain. Being shredded apart by this beast's horn, being blasted by an energy blast, being manipulated to commit suicide, and many others. Give up. You don't have a chance to win against me. As the strongest being, it was impossible for him to be brainless. Even the Dragon King could think individually, even better than a human, so why shouldn't the Great Red do so? If there was something different, the Great Red's nature was pure, as there was no need for him to become mature. Everything that annoyed him would be killed and destroyed in front of his mighty power. Instead of taking into account the others, it was the others that should take account of him. It was more appropriate to think of the Great Red as a nature instead of an individual. Yet, Riser didn't say anything and kept attacking. Even if all of his attacks would end him dying, it didn't matter since he could be reborn once again. Attack and be reborn. Attack and be reborn. This was what he had done for so long, and he wasn't sure how long it had been considering he had made the time move differently from the inside the space of Duelist and the outside. However, during the Great Red's attack, Riser also awoken his devil fruit. The power of Tori Tori no Mi, model, Phoenix, bloomed, and he really became the Phoenix. Naturally, he could fight the beastly nature of the Phoenix, and his will win against the will of the Phoenix, yet this was something natural as his will was tempered by the Great Red's mind attack. Still, at that moment, his will also strengthened, and he could resist the Great Red's mind manipulation, causing him to be able to use the ruler once again. This damn annoying power. Even the Great Red was helpless against the ruler since all of his attacks would be reversed into healing and fortification on Riser's body. Naturally, he knew the weakness of this power and tried to heal Riser, but Riser deactivated the ruler, so everything was meaningless. Their situation was in a stalemate, and no one could defeat each other. Moreover, the ruler also had evolved, so all the mind manipulation would be reversed and made Riser stronger instead, so using the mind manipulation was meaningless for him. The Great Red also couldn't read Riser's mind once again since Riser's will could resist him. However, it was impossible to determine the winner, especially when all of Riser's attacks and damage caused by Riser became nothing but a dream. Riser was helpless and thought that there was only one way for him to win, so he directly charged forward as if he were ready to fight in the close combat fight. Just die. The Great Red was utterly annoyed by a cockroach's existence in front of him. Riser was just dying, and everything Riser did was meaningless, yet Riser kept trying to fight him. How could he not be angry? Yet, when the Great Red slammed Riser, unlike before, Riser didn't die immediately and held on, grinding his teeth and sticking into the Great Red's body as if his life depended on it. Riser knew that he had never tried this method, but he knew if he didn't try, nothing would happen, and he also didn't think that he could develop his technique so fast, so in the end, this was the method he could think of to defeat the Great Red. What are you doing? The Great Red noticed that his body seemed to be absorbed into Riser. You should know all of my skills, right? This. Degenerate. Degenerate. Ability to transform two different targets into a single object and separate property. In other words, it was an ability to combine and separate. Riser decided to combine himself with the Great Red. Are you crazy? Do you think you can win against me? Naturally, when they combined with each other, there was a risk where Riser's will was devoured by the Great Red. However, there was also a chance for him to devour the Great Red and gain all of the Great Red's power. At that moment, Riser didn't care anymore, and he just wanted to beat the shit out of this beast. If I don't get closer, then I can't beat the shit out of you. Then come. As the two combined, they devoured each other until one of them died. Yet, what the Great Red didn't know was that the moment they combined into each other, it was Riser's victory. I have one. Riser took out the mocking gear he created by using Samel, the Dragon Eater. During his previous stay in the human world, he also visited the deepest part of the underworld, Poseidus, where Samel was kept. Stealing it from Hades, he directly created a mocking gear using Samel's body and soul. Even if the Great Red was the strongest being, he was still a dragon, and this poison worked the best on the dragon. Before their fight, Riser had prepared for this mocking gear. But he never used it until he got a chance to fuse himself into the Great Red's body since he was afraid all the preparation he had prepared would end in failure when the Great Red used the power of dream. You bastard. Coward. Riser only laughed and thought that Issei should have died with this poison, too. What about him? Riser didn't care about the poison, and more importantly, he wasn't a dragon. Also, when the Great Red was affected by the Mimo Mimo no Mi, he easily manipulated the Great Red's memory so it would let him devour it. Realizing this, the Great Red tried to fight, but it was too late. Riser was already inside his body, and his body had already been affected by the poison of Samel. Unless he threw Riser out and erased this poison, there was nothing he could do. I curse you. I curse you, Razir. Riser only laughed and felt happy by the despair of his enemy. It was also his revenge, especially when he wasn't sure how many times he was killed. This was also the reason why he decided to accept the challenge, since he knew as long as he devoured the Great Red, he would become truly invincible. It was a long process, but it was in the end a. Congratulations, you have received 5 random rewards. The victory was in his hands. Yet, what he didn't know was that it was impossible to kill the protagonist easily. Chapter 290, God of Breast *****. Hi, say. It was all dark. It was impossible to see. Hyo, do. Is. Say. A voice? Hi do is say. The voice was muffled and could hardly be heard like the chirping cicada during the summer. It was particularly annoying, especially when one wanted to sleep. However, it was also due to this that Issei Hayadu, who lost consciousness, also regained consciousness. This is... Partner. Drake? Is that you? It's me. Where are we? Why couldn't I see anything? Issei was confused and scared since he couldn't see anything, or rather, he couldn't feel anything. All of the feelings in his senses disappeared as if he was dead. That's... Let me explain. Huh? Who are you? Issei was startled and also wary since this was a voice that he had never heard of. I am Shikigami, god of Breast Asterisk S. 2x. Issei and Drake wondered whether they had fallen into a hallucination. Sorry. Issei was dumbfounded and fell into a daze. I am Shikigami, the god of Breast Asterisk S. You can also call me Chimun Chapati. Even if Issei was panicked due to the lost feeling of his senses, he fell into silence as if his head was shut down. He thought for a moment and asked, is this a dream? Unfortunately, not. Drake. Issei hoped that he was just dreaming since there was no way for the god of Breast Asterisk S to exist, right? Even if it existed, why should it appear before him? Was it because he was a pervert? Was it because he loved Breast Asterisk S? There was no way for him to accept this. It seems this god is real, partner. It is really the god of Breast Asterisk S. Issei. While Drake was speechless, Issei wondered why he had never heard of such a god. If he heard it, then he would pay homage every day, so his days would be filled with amazing Breast Asterisk S. Thank you. I am glad to know that there is such a kind boy in this world who is in love with Breast Asterisk S as much as you. Thank you. Issei wasn't even sure what to say after hearing such praise. Nevertheless, Drake wished to cry since his current host was such a pervert. Still, it is normal for you not to know me since I am a god from another world. God from another world? 2x. The information was so surprising that Issei and Drake were in disbelief. Yet, strangely enough, neither of them doubted this information. Was it because the two of them were idiots? That probability was relatively high. So, why did God Sama talk to me? Did Issei do something? Except for thinking of a harem or bow asterisk BS, he felt that he didn't do anything wrong, right? The reason why I have talked to you is because you have died. WH what? You have died, Hayato Issei. No way. There is no way that idea. Issei stopped as he remembered everything. He remembered how Asia was kidnapped by Diodora, then he killed Diodora, but at that time, he was also killed. You remember it? Issei fell in silence before he cried. WHY? I haven't even become the harem king. Partner. Drake was also helpless since there was nothing he could do. Why did I die? Issei only remembered that he felt an intense pain before everything was over. He should be stronger than Diodora, yet why did he die? It's all because of the poison of Samel. Poison of Samel? Impossible. Drake couldn't believe such an answer since he hadn't even seen the Samel during his host match against Diodora. So how could Diodora use the poison of Samel? More importantly, Samel had long disappeared, and even if Samel existed, Samel should be sealed within the deepest part of the underworld, Cocytus. It's normal if you don't believe it, but Samel is compressed into the small dagger that stabbed you at that time. That dagger? Naturally, Issei remembered that when Diodora was about to die, Diodora stabbed him. At that time, everything was so painful, but who would expect that he would die? Yes, that thing is something created by using the body of Samel. Issei felt conflicted, and he just didn't know what to do, but more importantly, well wait, if I die, then how could I talk with you? Why did you appear before me? Yes, to be honest, I am surprised that we can talk to each other and even meet each other, but due to your sincere love toward Breast Asterisk S, we are able to meet each other. In other words, our meeting is fated. Should Issei be happy? As for the reason why I appear before you, it's because I want to entrust you with something. Entrust me with something? Yes. Shikigami nodded. As I have said before, I am a god from another world. Eevee told. That's the name of my world. Unlike your word, my world is divided between Eevee and Atold, who have been at war with each other since ancient times. Issei and Drake weren't sure, but they just listened to Shikigami's story about another world and the war about the Eevees, the race for mechanical life forms, and Atolds, the race of high-ranked spirit gods. Naturally, Shikigami was part of the Atolds. Why did you tell me all of this? It's because I wish you to save our world. Save your world? What do you mean? Our leader, Risa Torres, received an oracle that in the near future, someone from your world would come to our world and lead the Eevee to invade us, Atold, and conquer our world. Who would do such a thing? Conquering another world? Who would do such a dangerous thing? You should be familiar with him. He is someone whom you have been entangled with and also someone who has made that dagger that killed you. The man behind everything. The one who made Diodora kill you. Do not tell me. Yes, Riser Phoenix. That's him. That bastard. Issei cried in anger as he thought about Riser, who would do anything to kill him. How dare he? Yet, at the same time, Issei was also scared as he thought at how cruel and strong Riser was. However, that's impossible. Drake refuted Shikigami's statement again. I admit that Riser Phoenix is strong, but he isn't that strong. How can he conquer another world? While it might be unbelievable, that's the truth. While we are not sure how he could gain all of his power, for one thing, he is strong. He might be the strongest in your world as he had defeated the strongest being in your world, the Great Red. Wawait. 2x. Issei and Drake were dumbfounded and startled as they felt that everything was impossible since there was no way for Riser to defeat the strongest dragon. However, at the same time, they knew that there was no reason for Shikigami to lie to them. Yet, it was also because of this they were in despair. If Riser could defeat the strongest being in their world, then what should they do? Their situation was completely helpless. Hayado Issei. You don't need to worry. Even if he is strong, we will help you to gain the power to defeat him. Why you want to help me? Issei was confused. It's because I know you are such a gentle young man. Everything about you is sincere, like your love for Bress *S. That's why we entrust our power into you, so you can defeat this evil. Can I really defeat him? If Issei could defeat Riser, then he would do anything. Yes. Believe in yourselves, Hayado Issei. Keep your love towards the Bress *S, and you will be able to win against him. While Issei was speechless, he also felt excited, but at the same time, he was also worried whether he could really defeat Riser. Partner. Drake didn't hesitate since if they could win against Riser, then why shouldn't Issei accept this power from Shikigami? More importantly, if you don't return, then your beloved Bress *S might be stolen by Riser. Please give me your power, Shikigami-sama. Then, accept our power. Oh, the Breast Warrior. No, the Red Dragon Emperor. Hayado Issei. Yes. The moment Issei accepted this power, he, who had died due to Samuel's poison, rebirthed and gained a new power from Shikigami. No, he became a new being with the combination of the Red Dragon Emperor and Shikigami. Then, I entrust everything to you, Hayado Issei. Shikigami. As Issei and Shikigami did a passionate exchange, Riser knew nothing and just lay on the ground as he was glad that he could stay alive. Yet what he didn't know was that he was about to face another troublesome opponent. Chapter 291. Are you ready? Even if the ground was dirty, Riser didn't care, especially after he had won against the Great Red and even devoured it. Degenerate. Somehow, he understood why the name of this ability was so wicked. After all, as long as he could absorb something into his body, he would become stronger. When he is addicted to the feeling of getting stronger by devouring the other, it would mean that he would degenerate, especially when he would become a strange creature of the combination of many. Frankly, he thought that turning his opponents into mocking gear was the best way, but he didn't expect that he could use his degenerate to devour others. Yet, frankly, he might not use this ability for a while, especially since the one he devoured was the strongest being in his world, the Great Red. As the strongest being, naturally, the improvement he gained after he devoured the Great Red was so great, especially the improvement in the amount of energy within his body. Moreover, he also gained a variety of abilities from the Great Red. If there was trouble, it would be that his race was no longer a pure devil. Instead, he was a combination of a devil and a dragon. Well, he got stronger, so it was good, right? Yet, due to this, he gained weakness from the poison of Samuel. Still, if it were others, they might be troubled, but him? The poison was simply meaningless to him. Not only could he use Degenerate to remove the poison within his body, more importantly, his fire ability would burn all the ailments and everything negative within his body. Lastly, with the ruler, everything that hurt him would only make him stronger. Even if he wasn't pure a devil and also a dragon due to devouring the Great Red, it didn't matter. Though he had to say, it felt quite ironic when he became an existence that he hated the most. Yet, even if he had devoured the Great Red, it didn't mean that he had fully digested it. He needed time to fully digest this beast into his body, but with the power of Gutsa Nomi, which made him a furnace devil, it shouldn't take a long time. At this moment, he just wanted to rest, sleep, and enjoy a quiet moment. He wasn't sure how many times he had died. Even if he had won in the end and couldn't die due to his immortality trait, he was still exhausted. Nevertheless, when he thought about the 6 figures who had given him trouble, he knew that he couldn't make them wait as he knew that it was time for him to mess up their lives. He wouldn't kill them so easily, and he was going to give them the taste of pain for what they had done to him, especially those dragons. By now, he knew that Tannen should have gone on a rampage in the underworld, but he didn't care. Moreover, no one would be able to link him with Tannen, especially after his heroic act of sacrificing himself to defeat the Great Red. Yet, unfortunately for them, he wasn't defeated, and he gained his victory. Moreover, he had become stronger, and he became the strongest being in his world. Still, if possible, he wished for someone not to trouble him anymore. Once he killed those 6 dragons, he hoped that everything was over. Yet, Riser sighed since he knew the greater the expectation, the greater the disappointment was. However, he was the strongest now, so no one should be able to defeat him, right? Let's check the rewards first. Congratulations, you have received 5 random rewards. Thank you. Good job. I am proud of you. Thanks again. Even if the system was kind of a bastard in the beginning, he was glad to have it now since if he didn't have it, he knew that his life would be in despair and let his life be messed up by the main protagonist. However, Issei had died. Still, there were many cockroaches that were still living well, and he knew that they would be a perfect companion for Surzek and Issei, so they wouldn't be lonely in the eternal abyss. Riser sat up as he opened all of his rewards. Congratulations, you have received his Sunshine, Pika Pika no Mi Complete Version, Sadinal, Thought Acceleration, and Chosen One. When he saw all of his rewards, he thought that it was amazing. As expected of the strongest being. When he saw all of his rewards, he was completely convinced why the Great Red was called the strongest being. However, that title was taken by him now. Still, he looked at his first reward, Sunshine, which was an ability that empowered him during the day. As long as the sun rose, he became stronger, and when it was midday, he became the strongest. Moreover, this power also allowed him to manipulate light and heat. Well, the manipulation of light and heat aside, as he could do it without the help of sunshine, was a great power, especially because it made him stronger during the day. Moreover, he knew that he could develop this power further. Let's check the next reward. Pika Pika no Mi. Riser directly ate this devil fruit, and he gained the ability to manipulate light and became a light. Now, he could even move at the speed of light. Wasn't he the strongest now? Well, he had eaten so many devil fruits now, so it was hard for him to get excited, even if the power was amazing. He quickly looked at his next reward, which made him dumbfounded. Saturnal. It was an ability to turn his body like a nuclear fusion to create more energy. This allowed his energy to increase dramatically, and no matter how much he consumed, it would not decrease. This allowed him to fight almost indefinitely without running out of energy. Riser tried to use this power, and as expected, he could feel his body filled with a limitless power. However, he could imagine that by using this ability, he would increase the speed of the planet's death. Still, he didn't really need to use this ability since, after devouring the Great Red, his energy was as good as limitless. The Great Red is the Void Dragon. Within the void, everything was his. Riser suddenly felt speechless at how strong he had become. Probably, nothing could become his opponent in this world. Still, his next reward was also quite amazing. Thought Acceleration. By using this ability, it would significantly increase his thought processing speed. Moreover, as long as he trained, the acceleration would increase even further, even hundreds of millions of times or more. Then, the last reward. While he wanted to check more, he wanted to check his last reward first. Chosen One. Riser fell into silence and realized this was an ability to turn him into the main protagonist. In other words, when he returned, all of his enemies would be destined to lose no matter how hard they struggled, especially when fate was in his favor. Supporting him and doing everything would make him the last one who stood up. Fufu. He wanted to laugh somehow after he gained this new ability. Did he gain this ability because he killed Issei? Well, it didn't matter since it was time for him to return to everyone. The space was open, and he walked out, ready to give a nightmare to all of his enemies. Oh, right. Before he left, he needed to make himself appear beaten up, or else many would be suspicious, right? Chapter 292. Can you smile? Kaicho, Ravel-sama, you should rest. Saji watched Sona's weak body from behind with heartache. It had been a week since Riser disappeared, and Sona never left the battlefield where Riser fought the Great Red. Even if it had been a while, he also had to say that he was unable to forget about it. When Saji thought about Riser's figure, who disappeared along with the Great Red, he somehow understood why Riser was Sona's husband. Yet, at the same time, he also knew what kind of impact would be brought by Riser's decision. Even now, the only person who could recover after this incident amongst Sona's peerage members was him. Except for him, everyone seemed like their souls sucked, and the time stopped for them. It was like they were alive, yet inside, they were dead. It was also for this reason that they stayed at the place where Riser had disappeared. Even though this place was closed due to the impact and radiation caused by the fight between Riser and the Great Red, it was too dangerous for one to get close. For them, it was nothing. Yet, with their current situation, their actions were as good as committing suicide. It's okay, Saji. I'm just going to stay here for a while. You should go back and rest. Sona didn't even look at Saji and kept staring at the sky in a daze before tears made her eyes blurry. She wasn't sure how many times she cried, but she just couldn't stop it. As for Ravel, she didn't even bother to answer and just sat in a daze. Saji was helpless before looking at the rest of the members of Sona's peerage, who were also in the same state as Sona. Even so, he also understood their situation, especially when he had lost his parents before, but he had to force himself to stand up for his family, and now their situation was the same. Saji knew that he couldn't be a replacement for Riser. No, it was impossible. However, Saji knew that he needed to support everyone during this moment. Still, like the rest, he was also in disbelief. Like others, he watched how Riser disappeared along with the Great Red. Riser-sama, you must win. Even if Saji knew that in front of the Great Red, all the struggle was meaningless, he still had hope that Riser would return. Even if no one believed and thought that Riser had died, he knew that no one in this place gave up that small chance. Saji also felt the same. As for Issei, while it was regrettable, Saji knew that there was nothing that one could do in that situation, but he had to say it was lonely. Even if Issei was a great pervert, Issei was still a student in the same school. Then, all of a sudden, something incredible happened in front of them. The space was twisted, and a familiar black hole appeared before them. Sona widened her eyes and didn't hesitate to approach this black hole. Ravel was even reckless, as if she was ready to jump into that black hole. However, before they could enter, someone they had been waiting for appeared before them. Oni-sama. Dear. His appearance surprised all of them, and after a momentary daze, they leaped directly into him. Ugh. Riser grimaced in pain when he was surrounded by everyone, but Zenovia directly headbutted his balls. I am glad. I am glad. Zenovia rubbed her face against his crotch while crying. Riser looked at Zenovia in silence and tried to push this crazy girl away, but his hands were latched by Sona and Ravel, so he couldn't move. While he was helpless, he greeted them. I am back. Welcome back. Right now, they just wished to remove their clothes and start to have a child with him. This was probably their regret, as they couldn't have his child before he disappeared. With how heated up the situation was, Riser glanced at Saji, who also teared up and ignored the crazy women around them. Thank you for your hard work, Riser-sama. Riser nodded. By the way, turn your head and close your eyes. Saji didn't even need Riser's reminder and automatically did what Riser asked. How long did I disappear? Riser asked. 1 week. Sona was so happy. 1 week, huh? Riser didn't expect that it had been 1 week since he had disappeared. After all, he felt like it had been so long since he met them, especially since he was tortured and killed by the Great Red countless times. So, how is it? Nothing happens, right? Well, while hesitating, they told him about what had happened in the underworld, especially about Tannen, who had gone on a rampage. I see. Riser nodded. I will go. Eh? Everyone was startled. You don't need, Riser-sama. You have just returned. There is no need for you to leave again. Leave the rest to the others. Frankly, they felt that except for Riser, the rest of the strong on the angel, fallen angel, and the devil were useless. They were weak. It's okay. I can defeat it easily. Wait for me at the villa. Also, prepare me the special phoenix tears that I crafted before. He kissed them and then went to midair, using the location to search where Tannen was before his body turned into a light and disappeared from everyone's vision. While they were dumbfounded by his actions, at the same time, they also realized something. Did their man defeat the Great Red? Does that mean that Riser was the strongest being now? Nevertheless, they can ask that question later since, right now, they need to prepare many things for his return, especially Yufufu. Watching everyone who was happy, Saji sighed helplessly, but he was glad that Riser was okay. At that moment, Ajuka was helpless. Not only Ajuka but all the strong devils were helpless since their territory was more or less affected by Tannen's rampage. Yet, Ajuka's helplessness was different from theirs since he knew the origin of Tannen's rampage, but even so, there was nothing he could do. While he could defeat Tannen, if Tannen didn't face him and fight him, it would be impossible for him to defeat Tannen. Ajuka's way of fighting was countered, and after he learned everything about his opponent, he defected to them as they realized their powerlessness. But if the opponent didn't face him directly, he could do nothing. Moreover, Tannen always seemed to notice him, so Ajuka could only chase after Tannen from behind. However, this time, it was different. With the combination of many and being encircled by all the powerhouses, this time, they should be able to defeat Tannen. Now, it's time to end this. Ajuka sighed and thought that after this, he could focus on his revenge on the White Dragon Emperor. If there was something that he needed to watch out for, it would be Azazel. But then, suddenly, everyone noticed a bright light, and Tannen, who soared in midair, was suddenly reduced into a pile of flesh. Everyone fell into silence before they fell into a maniacal state and cheered. Lucifer-sama. Riser-sama. It's great. Only Ajuka fell in silence, unable to appreciate their joy, as he could see Riser staring at him with a smile. Chapter 293. No time to rest. Riser Lucifer returned. When this news was announced, the entire underworld exploded. They were dancing, crying, and full of happiness with the return of their Lucifer. While they wished to meet him, it was said that Riser went to rest to recuperate all the wounds. So what about the Great Red? This was a question that everyone wished to ask, but no media could approach him, and they could only wait until Riser was ready to talk. Still, more importantly, Riser was okay. and that was the most important thing. While many wanted to come, wishing to see him, and even asked him about many things, Reiser didn't wish to meet everyone. He just finished his battle, and he just wanted to do his own things instead of accommodating everyone's worries, needs, etc. He knew that it might be arrogant for him to do so, especially when he always carried a polite attitude toward everyone as long as they treated him nicely. If they treated him badly, then he would treat them twice worse. Nevertheless, while many complained inwardly, no one said anything since this was his wish. So, during those 3 days, he spent all of his time with his women and didn't care about anything. While everyone under Phoenix House and Citri House knew what Reiser was doing now, others didn't appreciate it. Did he become so arrogant after he became Lucifer? Lord Bael was displeased when he thought his wish to meet Reiser was rejected. Even if Reiser had defeated the Great Red, Reiser was still a devil. Reiser's position was below him, and the reason Reiser could become Lucifer was also because of him. How could this brat be so ungrateful? This action might be unnatural, but Lord Bael, as the leader of the Great King faction, felt inferior toward Reiser, and it was also due to this that his attitude worsened, especially when his current wife and all the trusted by his side often talked about Reiser. However, the moment Lord Bael said those words, he was slapped by his father. Slap. F.A. father. Lord Bael was dumbfounded, but Zekrom Bael didn't care about his son's attitude and kept beating him until Lord Bael was half dead. Forgive me, father. Forgive me. When Zekrom was angry, no one dared to say anything. Even Lord Bael, the king of the underworld, could only suck *MB to his father's brutality. It wasn't until Lord Bael was almost dead that Zekrom stopped. I wonder if there is something wrong with my education. You have grown so old. Why are you still acting like a brat? F.O. forgive me, father. Lord Bael cried as he kept apologizing. Looking at his son, which was so disappointing, Zekrom sighed and knew that there was no cure for idiocy. Maybe I should change you with your son. At least, he was sure that Lord Bael's son would be easier to use and definitely wouldn't do anything so stupid. As for the others, he didn't even bother to tell them why he did this since it might be better for those who were idiots to die. Zekrom didn't feel afraid of the powerful enemies, especially Reiser, who could stay alive after fighting the Great Red. Instead, what he was afraid of was a stupid teammate that would bring him to ruin. So, with that decision, Zekrom didn't care about his son and swiftly moved on to his next plan, using his grandson as his next puppet. As for Lord Bael, it might be better for Lord Bael to stay in the castle all the time to become a Sao to create the next generation of the Bael House. However, compared to the situation of the Bael House, the situation of a certain group was much worse. After Reiser destroyed Tannen, he left directly, leaving all the mess to Ajuka and the others. Yet, unlike the others, who could swiftly do their jobs, Ajuka couldn't, especially when he was surrounded by the previous alliance that was created to summon the Great Red to kill Reiser. Frankly, before the alliance was created, everyone was confident, as no one thought that Reiser would be able to win against the Great Red. Even if Reiser hadn't died, it would have been impossible for Reiser to return so swiftly. Still, was the Great Red defeated? Did Reiser win? How can Reiser return? This question kept appearing, especially when Ajuka recalled the smile that Reiser showed that day. Ajuka, it's all your fault. Naturally, Tiamat was the one most frightened by the return of Reiser. She knew that she had nothing to do with Reiser and their relationship was just SOSO. If she didn't owe something to Ajuka, she wouldn't even do anything to Reiser. Yet, everything had been done, and she knew sooner or later, Reiser would give his revenge. While Tiamat wasn't sure whether Reiser would win against the Great Red or not, she knew he could kill Tannen with ease. Tannen, who had gone on a rampage in the underworld without anyone being able to stop it, was just dead like that under Reiser. Then what about her? Hearing Tiamat's outburst, the 5 individuals who had planned and done the dragon summoning previously fell in silence, and no one knew what they should do. But somehow, Yunlong, the youngest and the most cowardly Dragon King, felt calm when he saw Tiamat. Why are you so calm? Tiamat looked at Yulong strangely. Frankly, except for Tiamat, whether it was Sun Wukong, Yulong, Fafnir, Azazel, or Ajuka, all of them were calm, and nothing was shown on their faces. What are you worried about? No one knows what we are doing, right? Yulong said with ease. That's right. Except for the 6 of them, no one knew that they were the ones who did the dragon summoning to kill Reiser. As long as no one says anything, nothing will be known. Sun Wukong only nodded, then looked at everyone. Unless someone wants to commit suicide, it is. No one wanted to be killed by Reiser, so they knew what they needed to do was to keep silent and pretend nothing was happening. However, I don't think that he can defeat the Great Red. Instead, I think that he must be using some tricks. Sun Wukong added that he didn't think that the devil was so strong. Compared to the Chinese myth and the Hindu myth, the Christian myth was like a baby, after all. Moreover, everyone knew how crazy the Great Red was, and with Reiser's power, it should be impossible for him to defeat it. So, at this moment, their decision was clear, and it was just a matter of pretending that they did nothing. Yet, Ajuka and Azazel knew that everything would be far from simple, but they wouldn't say anything since, like what Yulong and Sun Wukong said, no one knew that it was them who had done it. As for Fafnir, Fafnir was so bored and didn't care about their conversation. Instead, he was just wishing to meet Asia, especially after he got the precious panties from Asia. As for Riser or whatever, Fafnir didn't care since he didn't think he had done anything wrong. Asia Tan. Fufufu. 5x. Congratulations, you have received Kibi Kibi no Mi complete version. Riser, who could have a moment of calm after several days of intense fight, checked the reward he gained after killing Tannen and ate it without hesitation. But when he was about to check the information about this ability, he noticed a crazy presence that was about to ruin his city. Directly, Riser teleported to the source of this problem and thought to fight. But then, are you the one who defeated the Great Red? Riser felt familiar with this individual, but somehow, he needed to check it. Who are you? I am Ophis. Riser had just finished his battle, so did he need to fight again? Chapter 294. Infinite Dragon. As Riser had said before, he was familiar with some of the plots due to his experience of watching this story from his previous life. Naturally, he didn't know until the end, and only some of them, but it greatly helped him with many of his actions. As for the Great Red, Riser was unfamiliar with it, and it was also due to this that he underestimated its power. However, Ophis was different. While Riser wasn't sure how strong Ophis was, this infinite dragon should be weaker than the Great Red. After all, if Ophis was stronger than the Great Red, she shouldn't be pushed out and left the dimensional gap. It was because she was weaker that she became the leader of the Chaos Brigade and wished to defeat the Great Red. However, the Great Red had been defeated by him. If Ophis wished to return to the dimensional gap, then why should she come to visit him? Nevertheless, the appearance of Ophis really surprised him. While he had the memory of his previous life, watching how the little girl with long black hair that reached her hips and black eyes in front of him was supposed to be the Infinite Dragon and the leader of the terrorist organization made him unsure of how to react. Moreover, he didn't feel the hostility that came from her. Instead, all he could see was just curiosity. Still, there was one big problem. Did you plan to destroy my town? Ophis nodded. Why? I want to meet you, but the barrier is so annoying. Did you want to destroy my town because you wanted to meet me? Riser had an intense headache, and his head was throbbing. Next time, don't do this. If you want to meet me, then just call me directly. I will give you a way to communicate with me later. Ophis nodded obediently. Still, watching how obediently and well-behaved this dragon was, Riser suddenly became curious. Was this really the leader of the terrorist organization? Somehow, watching how innocent this dragon was, he could imagine that Ophis was being used by everyone on the Chaos Brigade instead of being the real leader behind this terrorist organization. So, why did you come here? I wanted to ask you if you had defeated the Great Red? Ophis asked again with her usual blank expression. Yes, he had defeated the Great Red, but somehow, he didn't want to tell it directly. As the Infinite Dragon, you should be able to tell, right? Hearing his question, Ophis kept staring at him and said, I smell the scent of the Great Red on you. Did you eat it? Oh, can you tell? Aren't you scared? I might eat you, you know? Riser decided to tease this little dragon. However, Ophis shook her head. No, I don't feel scared. Do you think you can defeat me? Riser raised his brows, wondering why she made such a statement. Ophis was about to nod, but then she shook her head. I can't defeat you. How honest. Riser thought that Ophis would be stubborn, believing that she could defeat him, but that didn't seem to be the case. Frankly, he knew how stubborn and proud the race known as a dragon was. Being born with an almighty power that could destroy everything as it pleased made their nature arrogant. Even the Great Red was like that. However, Ophis was different. She was blank, zero. It was like she was a blank white canvas, pure like a child or even a baby. Was this a dragon that had been living for so long? Why was it like he faced children? By the way, is that what you want to ask? So, what are you doing after this? I will go back. Where? The Chaos Brigade. Why? Because I can't defeat you. Riser was dumbfounded and asked, You want to defeat me? Yes. Ophis nodded. Why? Riser was confused. Because I want to return to the dimensional gap. If you are there, I can't return, Ophis answered naturally. Why do you want to return to the dimensional gap? That's my home, Ophis answered. If you are there, I can't return to my home. Why, if I am there, that you can't return? Because you don't allow me to return to the dimensional gap. No, if you want to go back to the dimensional gap, then go for it. I don't forbid you to go back. Facing such a pure dragon, Riser knew that he needed to ask more questions to understand what she felt and thought within her mind and heart. Fortunately, he was patient and understood everything, so the misunderstanding between them didn't happen. Still, Riser understood why Ophis wished to fight the Great Red since that overgrown red lizard occupied Ophis' home. If Riser was in Ophis' place, he would naturally get angry, but in front of the overwhelming power, what could one do? However, The Great Red had been defeated, and Riser didn't forbid Ophis to go back. So if she wanted to go back, then she should just do it. Ophis fell into silence and kept staring at Riser. You don't want the dimensional gap? No. Why? Because that's a place, not my home. Ophis fell in silence again, but then she said, but as long as you are here, the place can't become mine. So, you have to defeat me to get to that place? Yes. Ophis nodded. Riser thought for a moment and suddenly remembered the Kibi Kibi no Mi, which he had just eaten. This devil fruit gave him the ability to create a dango that could be used to tame animals and anyone that had a trait of animal within them. If he had to say, this ability was similar to Pito Pito no Mi, but if the Pito Pito no Mi was like slavery, the Kibi Kibi no Mi was like an instant absolute loyalty. So watching Ophis, who stared at him with a pure gaze, Riser was going to tell him about the cruelty of the world. He directly created a dango with his new power and caused Ophis' nose to twitch. She kept staring at the dango and didn't hide her interest in it. Do you want to eat it? Ophis nodded. Open your mouth. Ophis opened her mouth and let Riser feed him without knowing that he was under the control of this bad guy. Is it delicious? Even if her answer was the same as before, still blank as ever, her eyes showed excitement as the taste of the danger was so delicious. Riser also tried the dango and had to say it tasted delicious, but it didn't seem that it affected him. Do you want to follow me? Follow you. If you follow me, you can eat the dango like before. Okay. Ophis nodded without hesitation. Then, let's go and visit my house. Riser held Ophis's small hand and led him into his city. What about the dimensional gap? What about the thought of defeating him? In front of the deliciousness of this dango, Ophis forgot everything. Still, if there was something that made Ophis curious except for the dango that she had just eaten, it was Riser's hand. She stared at the hand that held her hand gently and thought that it was so warm. Chapter 295. Let's keep her. After 5 days, Riser finally let those who wished to meet him visit his villa. Naturally, he only let those on the top visit him, such as the other 4 Mouse, Zekrom, Michael, and Barricule. As for the rest? Sorry, he still wanted to rest. Still, unlike before, those who were invited didn't bring their companion, and they came by themselves without anyone by their sides. Well, even if they brought their companions, those companions didn't enter Riser's villa and were just left outside, waiting for the meeting for all the leaders to finish. Azazel was also outside, wishing to enter, but he didn't dare. Nevertheless, those who were inside were dumbfounded by their announcement. This is Ophis, the leader of the Cows Brigade. Riser introduced Ophis like he introduced his friend during a party. Meanwhile, Ophis only nibbled a dango given by Riser with her small teeth as she sat on the oversized chair prepared by him inside the room. Sorry. Falbium asked once again as if he didn't believe what he had just heard. This is Ophis, the infinite dragon and also the leader of the Cows Brigade. Riser introduced Ophis once again without a fluctuation in his expression. However, everyone fell silent and wondered what they should do in this situation. After all, they were so confused at why the leader of the Cows Brigade would be by Riser's side. Why was she here? Zekrom asked calmly. As the oldest among them, he was probably the calmest, but he just didn't know how to react as it was his first time to see such a bizarre situation. Why you were here, Ophis? Riser asked. Because I want to defeat Riser, Ophis said plainly. Everyone. Riser then looked at everyone and asked, so what do you think I should do? Everyone. If Riser's enemy was a great, fearsome opponent with a brutality that would cause every child to cry with all of their might, then there was no need for him to discuss his problem. However, his enemy was a little girl who sat on his side and nibbled the dango he made. When Ophis finished her dango, she pulled the hem of his shirt and asked, Oni-chan, can I ask more? No. Riser shook his head. It's almost time for dinner. You shouldn't eat too much dango. It isn't healthy. His dango had no nutritional value except to be tasty and capable of brainwashing everything related to animals to have absolute obedience toward him. While he wasn't sure whether this dango would affect Ophis, he could tell that he had tamed her. Still, Ophis, who couldn't receive her dango, didn't give up and kept staring at him. Even if you keep staring at me like that, I won't give you anything. Riser rubbed Ophis' head helplessly, carried her in his arms, put her in his lap, and asked everyone, so what do you think I should do with this criminal? Everyone. They just didn't know what to say. Even if the one in front of them was a little girl, there was no doubt she was one of the strongest beings and also the leader of the most dangerous terrorist organization, Cows Brigade. Still, it was good that Riser asked about their opinion, but they also felt confused about what they should do with this little girl. Should they keep this little girl? However, what if the other factions misunderstand their relationship with the Cows Brigade? What if they return this girl to the Cows Brigade? So, shouldn't they make the Cows Brigade stronger again? Still, there was something that they wanted to ask. Was this really Ophis? Yet, they didn't dare to ask that question and looked at Riser, hoping he could erase their doubt. Riser also understood this, then took out another dango and said, I will give you one more. Ophis wanted to take the dango, but she couldn't since his palm closed. She looked up at him and said nothing, but her eyes clearly showed dissatisfaction. I will give this dango to you, but you need to do something for me. Do you see that man with that green hair? Ajuka was dumbfounded. If you defeat him, I will give you another dango. 2 dango. Ophis became smarter. Okay, 2 dangos. Riser nodded while feeling that Ophis was stupidly cute. But don't kill him, and don't hurt the others, okay? Okay. However, Ajuka, who became Ophis' target, was startled, but before he could say anything, he was blasted by a powerful impact. Ajuka plopped directly, defeated by Ophis, before flying out of the meeting room. What's happening? An enemy attack. Hurry up and prepare. However, be quiet. At that moment, everyone felt a powerful aura from Riser, and they all fell into silence again. When Riser was serious, he had always released an aura that would conquer everyone's will, and as long as they were weaker than him, they would give up, and there was no trace of resistance except for those who had a certain role within the story. However, when he added the Haushuka Haki to this aura to the aura that came from Villain, it made him simply unstoppable, and all of them fell down directly. Still, if this was enough to make all of them simply give up all the struggle, what if Riser added the Chosen One? Wouldn't they just commit suicide? Riser then snapped his fingers, and Ajuka, who had been thrown so far away, suddenly returned. Everyone fell into silence again, but not by how Riser used the ability to return Ajuka to the meeting. Instead, they were surprised by many things, whether it was Ophis, Riser's aura, Ophis' obedience toward Riser, and many other things. They just really didn't know how to react. Still, Ajuka, who lost consciousness, also started to regain consciousness after being healed by Riser's flame. Are you all right, Ajuka-kun? Ajuka closed his eyes, then looked at Riser with a gentle smile. Yes, Riser-kun. Riser knew. This was what was inside Ajuka's head, but then he wondered what he should do until suddenly he lost his calm when he saw Ophis was about to make a move once again. Stop, Ophis. Riser put his hand on the top of Ophis' head, then took out 2 dangos for her. Here for you. Just eat quietly over there. Riser was about to move Ophis to the other chair as he needed to continue the meeting, but she stuck with him and didn't want to move. I want to sit here. Riser was speechless, then rubbed Ophis' head helplessly before noticing Seraphal, who was looking at Ophis in jealousy, which made him even more speechless. Why were you jealous? Still, even after that, Seraphal didn't meet him, or she just didn't know how to meet him, especially when everything was surreal. Yet, the main theme of this discussion was about what they should do with this infinite dragon. Can you keep it by your side, Riser-kun? Zekrom suddenly asked. I don't mind, but what about all of you? Do you mind if I keep her here? Riser asked. What could they say in this situation? Nothing. In the end, all of them agreed that they left Ophis to Riser, especially when her appearance was nothing but an accident. As for the Chaos Brigade and the other factions, with Riser by their side, was there something they should be worried about? Yet, for Azazel, who could only wait outside, he felt like everything was nerve-wracking. By the day, why did she call you Oni-chan? Falbium asked curiously. Because I asked her to do so. Everyone. Chapter 296, D*E, Get Stronger, and Repeat. Let's put the matter of Ophis calling Riser with Oni-chan aside. There were many things they wanted to ask him. Still, as to why Riser asked Ophis to attack Ajuka, while many were curious, they decided to keep silent since there was probably something that they didn't know, and, more importantly, there was a question that they wanted to ask. Have you defeated the Great Red, Riser-kun? Michael asked. This was the question on everyone's mind, and they wanted to know whether Riser was really able to defeat the Great Red or not. Even though many days had passed, they still recalled the terror they felt that day. That powerlessness, helplessness, and despair, they were still vivid in their minds. It was also due to this that they didn't want to feel that feeling anymore. If Riser could really defeat the Great Red, then there was no doubt that he would become an existence similar to the God of the Bible in their minds. If that happens. Michael thought about Gabriel, who had always wished to meet Riser, and felt that it should be a time for them to meet each other, especially when their new hopeful research was about to bear fruit. Moreover, this was a different era, an era where God was no longer with them, an era where the devil, the angel, and the fallen angel sat at the same table. If the angel could have a deeper relationship with Riser through Gabriel, then everything was worth it. As for those believers, they were never under Michael's consideration since they were just weak humans, and sooner or later, they would pass away. Instead of thinking about them, it was better to think about the continuation of the angel. I do. While they had expected this, they couldn't help but gasp. Impossible. How? Those questions kept bombarding their minds, yet they knew they shouldn't hurry him and should be patient since they knew that Riser would explain it to them shortly. Riser had previously thought and felt like it would be better to announce that he had defeated the Great Red. Many probably thought that being low-key was the best, but he didn't think so. If one didn't know what his deeds were, they would underestimate him, and they would do some tricky conspiracy again. Riser wanted to rest for a while, so announcing his deeds was better, and it also made many myths wish to become part of the alliance. There were probably some who didn't believe in his power even if he announced that he had defeated the Great Red. But so what? Once again, after so many times, he repeated this fact. In the supernatural world, right or wrong didn't matter. What was important was strength. As long as one had strength, standing on the top of everyone, no matter what one did, one would be deemed as the correct one. The strongest was justice. Riser was the strongest now. While he knew that some might challenge him, they were just a group of small insects compared to the Great Red. I know that you are curious about how I have defeated this big lizard, so I will explain it to you. His rude way of explaining the Great Red made them speechless, but from his tone, they knew that he had a lot of grudges toward the Great Red, so they didn't say anything. Still, they were worried about Ophis' reaction. However, it seemed like Ophis didn't care about this and only ate the dango with her small hands as she leaned on Riser's chest contently. Still, she looked up at Riser as she wanted to know how Riser defeated the Great Red. It's simple. Never give up. What the hell? Never give up? How could you just defeat the Great Red without just a will alone? Still, Riser's answer surprised all of them. The trait of the Phoenix House was immortality, so no matter what, as long as Riser had a will, he wouldn't do anything more than that. He also developed an ability to get stronger as he was hurt in D** addition. So, you kept dying to get stronger. Yes. Riser nodded. I kept dying, then got stronger than the Great Red, then defeated it. He hadn't lied since he really had defeated the Great Red, but what he didn't say was about how he had devoured the Great Red, since if he had told all of them about this, he knew that they would be wary of him. The ability of the degenerate was too dangerous, and no one wished to be devoured by him so he could get stronger. Yet, his explanation made everyone cry. His explanation might be simple, but they knew that his battle definitely wasn't easy. Dying, then stronger. Riser kept repeating it until he won. Yet, at the same time, Zekrom knew that it was a wise move to support Riser, especially when Riser couldn't D***. As long as Riser existed, the devil would be invincible. Moreover, Riser's status quo and laissez-faire way of governing was within Zekrom's line. However, Ajuka couldn't keep his calm. Couldn't D***? If so, then how could they defeat Riser? Ajuka didn't have any prejudice, confidence, or the calm demeanor that he had always shown before. Instead, he was desperate, especially when he knew that Riser would kill him sooner or later. As for why Riser didn't immediately kill him, probably because Ajuka knew that Riser could kill him anytime, and Riser wished to play him like a cat played with a mouse that it could eat anytime. While he was angry about being treated like this, he knew that he was helpless, but then again, he wasn't sure whether Riser knew everything. Did Riser really know everything? Was Riser asking Ophis before he went to test him? Ajuka didn't know, but he knew he needed to set up another plan. Still, among all the individuals present, there was no doubt Barrakiel was the most calm, especially when his daughter was Riser's woman. To be honest, as long as they didn't do anything and just continued to exist, there wouldn't be any problems. However, Barrakiel knew that everything wouldn't be simple, especially when he thought about his former leader, which made him sigh. In the end, their meeting ended, and they talked about the Norse myth that wished to make an alliance with them, and also the Greek myth that showed an interest in their alliance. Greek myth? That chaotic myth. That one. While they knew that Riser's way of describing the Greek myth was kind of rude, they knew that he was correct since many gods in that myth were quite unique. This was probably the most polite way to describe this myth. Can you trust them? Riser asked in the most polite way. They all felt awkward, but they nodded. Zeus and Poseidon have clearly told us that they wish to fight against the Chaos Brigade, Michael said, but then he realized what he was saying and felt his heart was beating so fast before he glanced at Ophis. When he saw her still calmly sitting on Riser's lap without even glancing in his direction, he sighed in relief. In other words, the Greek myth was just scared of the Chaos Brigade, so they decided to follow the trend since they didn't want to be destroyed like the Norse myth. Then, when should we meet them? Riser thought for a moment and said, let's do it after my match with Roygun Belphegor. Eh? Do you still want to participate in the raiding game? Why not? I still have an interest in becoming the rank 1. After all, Riser hadn't forgotten about D** Gehazer, as he wanted to break the championship record. Nevertheless, with that, their meeting ended, and they returned to their own place, but some wanted to stay in his city. Riser didn't care about them, and just held Seraphald's hand as he wouldn't let this woman run away again. Follow me. While Seraphald pouted, feeling quite angry due to his decision to sacrifice himself, when he held her hand and pulled her, she couldn't muster any strength and just Obed** instantly followed him like a little woman. Tonight, she knew she was going to become a woman after so many years. Only, don't follow us, Ophis. Stay with others first. Ophis. Chapter 297. Time. Really? Azazel was in disbelief. Yes. Ajuka nodded. Azazel held his head for a moment, then asked, have you told others? You don't need to. I don't want to add more burden. Ajuka shook his head, feeling the others were just a burden. Azazel didn't argue with Ajuka since he knew except for him and Ajuka, the rest didn't have much of an advantage in their brains. It might be better to keep them in the dark, so it wouldn't destroy what they planned to do. But did he really defeat the Great Red? Azazel was in doubt since he had seen how powerful the Great Red was, and he didn't believe that Riser had defeated it. No, he didn't want to believe it. In his mind, like the fallen angel and the angel, they had a limit, and it was impossible for them to become stronger than their creator, God. Even Surzek, who was previously dubbed as the strongest devil, was much weaker than the original God. So, how could Riser do it? If there was someone who could defeat the Great Red, there was no doubt it would be Vala Lucifer, the real descendant of Lucifer and also the host of the White Dragon Emperor. The combination of the two would definitely create the strongest being that one had never thought of. While Azazel didn't deny Riser's strength, it was definitely impossible for Riser to defeat the Great Red. It doesn't matter whether he can do it or not. What matters now is that we are much weaker than him. Ajuka didn't care whether Riser was stronger than the Great Red or really defeated the Great Red. Whatever the fact was, they weren't his opponents, and it was only a time before they were killed. Azazel fell in silence since he knew that Ajuka was correct. It didn't matter whether Riser was lying or not, but now he is helpless. Can he entrust everything to Vala now? No. Azazel couldn't, especially when he knew Vala had a lot of enemies, especially when Riser and Ajuka also wished to kill Vali. Previously, it was better since his opponent was only Ajuka, but now, Riser had returned, and this situation became more chaotic, and he didn't know what to do. Everything was hopeless. Everything was meaningless. Frankly, during his life, Azazel had met various helpless situations, but he could overturn them. Even if he fell and became a fallen angel and fought against his creator, he didn't give up and found a way to stay alive. But now, what should he do? Do you have a plan? Azazel looked at Ajuka, wondering whether Ajuka had a plan. At this moment, Ajuka's situation wasn't that good, especially when his position as a Mao was quite shaky. While one couldn't deny his achievement as he was the one who created the evil piece and also the raiding game, Riser could change his role, so even if he was gone, it didn't matter. Moreover, his little brother tarnished the Astaroth house and made him lose all the support of his family, especially when he did nothing and just let his family be destroyed along with Diodora. So, how could they care about Ajuka, who was cold-blooded toward his own family? Still, Ajuka had a plan. You are familiar with Longinus, right? Congratulations, you have received Slow Magic, Language Mastery, and Astronomy Mastery. Riser fell in silence when he saw his rewards before he looked at Seraphol, then Sona. Yes, he did it. He did it with the two sisters. Yet, this was something inevitable, especially with the current development. Riser knew that while his relationship with Seraphol was so close, they were also far away, considering she was his sister-in-law. While Seraphol loved him, she also loved Sona, so she was afraid that she might cause trouble for Sona, and she was also afraid that Sona would hate her. Sona might not be able to accept the others, but Seraphol? This might be hard. Yet everything changed after his fight with the Great Red. Riser didn't have any hesitation, especially when he knew that he might not be able to return when he fought the Great Red. Fortunately, unlike how the cliché developed, where the character would D** after kissing the woman they loved, he could return, stay alive, and win against such an opponent. While it felt awkward, he knew that he was glad to have a system. In the beginning, this system might force him to do something strange, but now it has helped him so much. You don't need to thank me. Still, was this the end? Riser wasn't sure about the next plot since his knowledge was limited. While it made him sigh, he knew that everything should be okay. He wasn't confident in his strength. Instead, he was confident that he wouldn't D***. In case someone might be stronger than him, it didn't matter as he would force them to enter the duelist space, so they would have a duel until one was defeated. Even if he D***ed several times, it didn't matter as long as he was the one who was the victor at the end. Still, he didn't bother to think about those unpleasant matters. Instead, he should enjoy his life well since he wasn't sure what was going to happen in the future. Yet, he had to say the rewards he got from Serral were a nice surprise. While Language Mastery and Astronomy Mastery might seem plain and didn't help him get stronger, they gave him a lot of knowledge regarding language and astronomy. Yet, he had to say those two pieces of knowledge greatly helped him. Language Mastery could help him read various information, whether it was lost, ancient, or various other information that could give him a benefit such as learning new magic, ancient technology, and various others. The devil might be able to talk in all the languages instantly, but it wasn't omnipotent after all, considering there were still many mysteries within this world. As for Astronomy Mastery, he had planned to create a satellite to help him monitor and kill many things. This knowledge helped him a lot, considering he was about to visit the space soon. Still, the one thing that surprised him the most was this slow magic. Was it due to Seraph's Ice Innate ability that he got this ability? Still, while it didn't help him much, it was good magic since it was an area of effect magic, which meant that everyone around him would be affected as long as he wished to. The ability of this magic was simple, and it was to slow down whatever they wished within a certain radius of themselves. It was part of the time manipulation. Time manipulation, huh? When he thought about this ability, the name of Agar's house crossed his mind. The Agar's house had the innate ability to manipulate time, but somehow, their time manipulation wasn't that particularly strong. Or was there just no strong devil ever born in this house? Yet, Riser had to say this ability was enviable since, if possible, he also wished to have this ability so he could return to the past and fix everything so his life wouldn't be so messed up. Still, everything had happened, and it was impossible for him to return to the past. Only, he wondered if it was possible for someone in the future to jump to the present time to fight him. Well, there shouldn't be, right? Riser-chan. Seraphol opened her eyes, but she was still sleepy and exhausted since she had just lost her first time. It wasn't that she was weak, but Riser was just too strong. It's still early. Let's sleep. Looking at Seraphol, who continued to sleep, Riser also continued to have a lazy life since it was his reward for his hard work. As for his enemies, there was no need to be in a hurry, and it was impossible for them to escape. As for the future individual, Riser crossed this possibility since he had never seen someone with such a powerful time manipulation ability, and even if they had such an ability, he didn't care since he couldn't D*E anyway. In the corner of the underworld, a figure with a muscular body full of wounds suddenly emerged with panic on his face. But when he looked at his surroundings and checked the current timeline, he sighed in relief, but at the same time, he had made up his determination. Issei-senpai, I will definitely stop him. Chapter 298, Bumpy Road. One-Isama was so cute at that time. Stop it. Don't tease your One-I-chan, So-chan. When they woke up, Sona teased Seraphol. Usually, Seraphol would tease Sona, but this time, their role was reversed. As last night was Seraphol's first time, Sona managed to get her revenge against her older sister, who had always caused her embarrassment. When she thought about last night, she couldn't help but tease Seraphol again, and naturally, Seraphol wasn't used to being teased by her little sister. Watching the relationship between the two sisters, Riser smiled and thought that making a harem was the best way to make all the women happy. Naturally, many would argue that monogamy was the best. Yet, when one is happy, there must be another who is unhappy. This was something inevitable, and to be honest, there was no perfect way. Riser couldn't say he was perfect, but he was trying his best since living in the supernatural world was hard. Still, their conversation turned into a strange turn all of a sudden. But So-chan, you should do your best, or else I might get his first child. You should know how hard it is to get a child as a devil, right? After enough teasing, Seraphol and Sona talked about having Riser's child. Riser. After the Great Red Incident, all of his women wished to be impregnated by him. Yet, Riser didn't want to have children, at least for now. While he could have children if he wished to, he didn't want to make a weakness for himself. A woman aside, a child was different. Moreover, instead of a chaotic environment where his children might be targeted, Riser wished to make a safe environment where his children could live freely without worry. He still had many enemies, and making his women pregnant now definitely wasn't a good choice. Are you done mating? 3x. Riser, Seraphol, and Sona fell in silence when they saw Ophis suddenly appear before them. While Ophis might seem like a little girl, she was much older than Seraphol. Probably, Ophis might have been born before this world even began to form. Who taught you that word? Riser was speechless and alarmed, wondering who dared to teach Ophis such crude knowledge. Zenovia. Taking a dango as a bribe from Riser, Ophis reported without hesitation. Seraphol stared at Riser and Sona. As Riser sighed, Sona closed her eyes helplessly and looked at Riser. Don't pamper her this time. I really need to educate this stupid girl. Go. Sona left directly as she needed to teach Zenovia. So, is it good? Ophis asked curiously as she nibbled her dango. Aren't you genderless, Ophis-chan? You don't need to think too much. Just eat, Ophis-chan. Seraphol patted Ophis' head gently like Ophis was her little sister. After asking many questions before, Riser and Seraphol knew that Ophis was genderless. This little girl's body was nothing but a physical form that she chose, but if she wanted to, she could create a bigger body like Seraphol. Moreover, if you mate with Riser, you can't defeat him. Why can't I defeat him if I mate with him? Ophis felt weird and curious. Because by then, you will love him and wish to stay with him forever. Love? What is that? Seraphol was about to teach this infinite dragon, but her head was knocked on by Riser. Stop saying something stupid. I'm trying to help you. Seraphol felt that as long as Ophis was with Riser, every conflict would be solved, and there wouldn't be any problems anymore. Moreover, everyone would live happily, especially when the combination of Riser, Seraphol, and and Ophis definitely wasn't something that one could ever think to defeat. It also was far better than letting this be used by others, right? Lastly, Riser definitely wouldn't use Ophis since his strength was above her. This was the difference between Riser and the Chaos Brigade. If the Chaos Brigade were to exploit Ophis, then Riser wouldn't do that. Riser knew Seraphal's thoughts, but he didn't want to use it to have much of an interaction with Ophis since this infinite dragon was too pure, and her experience was as good as zero. Don't listen to her. If you want to defeat me, then do it. If you want to stay here, just stay. Just follow whatever you wish it is. My wish. Ophis stared at Riser and fell in silence. Her wish was to return to the dimensional gap, but Riser told her that she could return to that place if she wished to. Yet, strangely enough, when he told her that she didn't want to leave. While she wasn't sure of the reason, as she had never felt this feeling before, if she had to describe it with a single word, then it would be a curiosity. After all, Riser was able to defeat her greatest enemy, the Great Red. Moreover, he was the first one who could treat her gently and warmly. While the Dango was part of the reason why she decided to stay, she wanted to know much about him. Ophis is gone? Yes. At this moment, no matter what their factions were, all the executives of the Chaos Brigade gathered together. Still, unlike their previous confidence and haughty nature, at this moment, everyone was quite anxious. The reason why all of them decided to join the Chaos Brigade was due to Ophis since she gave her power and shared it with all of them, so they could become stronger. So, if Ophis is gone, then was there even a point for them to join this organization? Yet, they knew that they couldn't get out since everyone had become a target of many forces within the supernatural world. To gain funding for their activity, they acted like robbers and did a lot of unforgivable things. As for why the other forces didn't dare to attack them carelessly, it was due to Ophis. If Ophis is gone, then those forces wouldn't hesitate to attack them, especially the Norsemyth that wished to kill all of them. Whether it was the Magician, Hero, Valley, or the remains of the old Satan factions, they were all thinking about how to clear up this storm. Yet, they didn't think about the others. Instead, they thought about themselves. Nevertheless, Valley lost his calm, especially when he knew how troublesome it was when he knew how much he needed Ophis. So, do you know where Ophis is? Hearing this question, everyone put their attention on Euclid Lucifuge. It's Riser Lucifer, Euclid said with a sigh. Everyone. Still, the leader of the Hero faction took an interest in this name. Riser Lucifer, huh? Meanwhile, Riser didn't know a new problem was staring in his direction, but even if he knew, this was normal since he had become a protagonist and a life was like this. It was impossible for everything to be smooth. The journey of life was full of bumpy roads, after all. However, to reach his destination, he wouldn't stop. Nevertheless, as he watched Sona reprimand Zenobia in the living room with a smile, causing the naughty exorcist to cry even harder, he suddenly noticed a figure that had been sitting on the corner of the room with a gloomy aura. Riser was startled, but then he realized who this was. Rosweiss. Hearing her name being called, Rosweiss looked up and then cried, full of injustice, Riser-sama. Chapter 299, My Wife is My Goddess. Rosweiss felt that her life had been full of hardship. Not only did she spend her childhood knowing that she didn't have the talent to inherit her family's magic, but she also spent all of her time studying and was unable to enjoy her youth. When she graduated, she worked directly under Odin, and her life was messed up as Odin often gave him a lot of trouble. Still, if Odin wasn't there, she wouldn't be able to meet her new employer, Riser Lucifer. Yet, all of a sudden, when her life was about to go straight to the moon, she was told that the Norsemyth was in trouble and many of her acquaintances were dead. While her parents were okay, she was still sad about what had happened. However, this wasn't the end since when she left, she was told that Riser had disappeared after he fought the Great Red. When Rosweiss heard the news, she felt that all of the power in her body was drained, and she thought that everything was just a lie. She didn't want to believe it, especially when her heart started to fall for someone, yet that someone would disappear and he might have even D** addition. So, even if she wished to stay with her family, she left and went to the underworld, but everything was too late. She didn't know what to do and just stayed at the station, helpless and in despair when she thought that she might not be able to meet him. Why? She wondered why she couldn't be proactive and stay by his side. When she thought of this, she wasn't sure how long she cried, and her heart was full of hatred, thinking of those who had taken all of her loved ones. Fortunately, a week later, Riser was able to return and solve the crisis that happened in the underworld. At that time, her monochrome-like world shone once again as she hurriedly went to his villa since she knew that place was the place where he would return. Yet unfortunately, she was late once again, but this time, she was late because his other women took him first, and it wasn't until a week later that she could meet him again. Frankly, her feelings became complex, both amazing and sad. She was amazed that Riser spent an entire week taking down all of his women, including the mother of his friend, which made her dumbfounded. Yes, Miss LaBelle, who couldn't wait to meet him, didn't care about anything and just went out to his villa under the gaze of all of his women. If they were dumbfounded, they somehow didn't feel surprised since they knew what Riser's bad hobby was. Yet, even so, they also understood why the mother of his best friend wished to be with Riser. Fortunately, everyone had their tacit understanding, and they wouldn't tell Riser's relationship with Misla. So, during the past week, the screams and moans of females never stopped. His villa was filled with lewd sounds and scents all the time. Facing all of those women, Riser never bowed down and kept standing up, gaining his victory, which amazed Rosweiss. Yet, at the same time, she was sad since he forgot about her and spent all of his time with the others. However, this was natural, right? After all, she was nothing but his bodyguard. Frankly, she knew that her act was nothing but insolence, but she just couldn't help but show her grievance when she saw him. Sorry for making you worry. Still, when she heard his sincere apology, her heart softened. It's okay, Riser-sama. Are you okay? I am okay. Riser asked Rosweiss about the Norse myth and whether her family was okay. Hearing her concern, she quickly forgot about her grievance and told him that everything was okay. It's going to be okay. The Norse myth is going to create an alliance, and I will do all I can to help your home. As her hair was softly caressed, Rosweiss subconsciously leaned on him. She loved this. There was no need to worry about anything as long as she was by his side. His firm chest, gentle touch, and warmth made her addicted, and she just wished for this to continue forever. Still, Riser wondered whether he was already a qualified villain. The reason why the Norse myth was messed up was all due to him. If he didn't set up everything, then would Odin and most of the wealth of the Norse disappear? Unlike the devil, angel, and the fallen angel, who didn't have trouble with money, the Norse myth was different since they lacked resources. It wasn't that they were poor. Instead, their 9 worlds were amazing and vast with a variety of things. But most of those resources were controlled by the minority, and they also lacked innovation, so there wasn't much opportunity that could be given to the young generation. Moreover, due to the time this myth was born and the situation of the North at that time, everyone had a habit of being a miser as no one knew what was going to happen in the future. However, their wealth was taken away by the Chaos Brigade, making them unable to prepare for the reparation of everything that was destroyed by the fake Ragnarok. Then, during this crisis, Riser would come out and help the Norse myth, becoming their savior, when the truth is that he was the destroyer. Still watching Rosweiss, who was in his arms, oblivious about everything, Riser wondered how she was going to react when she knew everything. Cough. So Sona-sama. While Rosweiss was scared and her face turned pale, Riser was speechless, looking at his wife, who stood by their side in silence. Yet he knew that it was a bit too much of him to caress another woman's hair when his wife was in presence. I noticed there was something on her hair before. So you helped her to clean her hair up? Sona asked. Riser nodded courageously. As Sona sighed, Rosweiss was even more scared. Yet, Sona didn't bother to trouble her husband since she didn't really mind either. As long as she was his wife, everything was okay. Still, Zenobia gave Riser a thumbs up. Riser. Rasis, can I call you that? Yes. I will be straight. Sona looked at Rosweiss and asked, do you want to become one of my peerage members? Riser was surprised, but he didn't stop Sona since he knew Rosweiss's potential wasn't bad. Rather, Rosweiss's potential was above the majority of Sona's peerage. Rosweiss was startled and asked curiously, do you mean that you want to turn me into a reincarnated devil? Yes. Sona nodded. What do you think? I will. I want to become part of your peerage member, Sona-sama. While Rosweiss wished to become Riser's peerage member, she knew that Riser's peerage members definitely didn't want someone to threaten their positions, and she also didn't want to become their enemies. Still, Sona was Riser's wife, and being a reincarnated devil under Sona was almost the same as being under Riser. Moreover, Rosweiss had always wished to become a reincarnated devil. You will be my rook from now on. Yes. Riser watched Sona take out her rook piece and turn Rosweiss into a reincarnated devil, thinking that he had changed many things in this world and that the future development would be even more chaotic than he could imagine. Oh, right, dear. Rias and Latia Astaroth wish to meet you. Staring at her knowing smile, Riser thought that he really needed to treat his wife well. Chapter 300, Confuse. Do you want to meet them? Sona asked. How long have they been waiting? Riser asked curiously since after he killed Tannen, he ignored everything and just spent all of his time with his women. Right after you return, they came directly to the city, waiting to meet you. Sona hesitated, then said, don't treat Rias coldly, okay? Just accept her as part of your harem. Riser was speechless by the words that came out of his wife's mouth. Was she really telling him to make Rias his woman? Frankly, while Riser was angry at Rias since he was the one who had messed him up, there was no doubt that she was beautiful, and he wasn't such a hypocrite, thinking that he didn't want to take her down. Probably after he fought the Great Red, he realized that he didn't want to have regrets in life. Riser knew that he might have become the strongest being in this world, but it didn't mean the trouble that came toward him would stop. Instead, he knew that many tricky things would come after him, one after another. While he was confident about his strength, he knew he couldn't take the other lightly. It was like a lion would use its everything to take down a rabbit. Still, if there was something that he regretted during his fight with the Great Red, it was the fact that he couldn't become Desperado. By becoming Desperado, he could affect fate and make it move in his favor. He could also increase his demonic power even further. While such a thing might be a small thing, especially after he had received the Chosen One that made him have a power similar to a protagonist and also devoured the Great Red, inherited all the power of the Great Red, including the power of the strongest being. If he could get more, why not, right? Yet, let's return to Rias. While Riser was greedy about Rias, he also didn't feel that much excitement toward her. He had a lot of women around him, and they were all beautiful. Frankly, their beauty wasn't much worse than Rias. If there was something that made Rias more special than the others, it would be her status as the main heroine of this story. Moreover, she was also Surzek, Lucifer's little sister and the heiress of the Gremry house. His desire to conquer such a woman was definitely high, but that was before, especially when he thought about how many of his problems were caused by Rias. Even if Rias' life is miserable now, it was something fair, especially when she was the one who had caused all of his misery. Still, he was curious. What happened to her? Riser might have controlled Tannen, but as he fought the Great Red, he didn't put his focus on Tannen. Hearing his question, Sona told him everything about how almost half of the Gremry domain was destroyed. Many of the branch family either D*ed or were injured. Surzeka's peerage members were all dead. And her father was in deep injuries due to Tannen. Oh, there was also Issei? However, Sona didn't bother to explain about Issei since he had already passed away. Still, Riser knew that Issei should have D*ed, right? Yet when Riser tried to search for boosted gear, he was unable to find it. Was there no new host for boosted gear? Still, the Longinus worked randomly, and everything was based on the system that was created by God. Even Azazel and the Grigori, who had learned about the sacred gears for so many years, were unable to understand the system created by God. Moreover, Riser also knew that the sacred gear would usually stay dormant unless the individual who was born with this power would awaken their sacred gears by a certain accident in their lives. Yet, it didn't matter since the boosted gear was only a mid-tier Longinus. While the power of boosted gear was good, it wasn't the strongest. Lastly, Riser confirmed that Issei had D*ed, so his life should be peaceful now as no one would annoy him any longer. Still, while Riser did not care much about the misery that happened in Rias' house, he needed to show his concern. Horrible, right? But I won't meet her and tell her that I am sorry. Huh? Sona was dumbfounded and asked, "You don't want to make Rias your woman? You silly girl." Riser looked at Sona helplessly and asked, "Do you think that I am still in love with her or something?" He held Sona on his arm and said, "Listen, Sona. You are my wife, and my love is for you. As for Rias, while her situation is quite regretful, this isn't the reason I should accept her as my woman. How should I explain this?" He thought for a moment and found the correct word. It isn't ethical, right? Riser knew that he was greedy for Rias' body, but it wasn't the point that he would beg or move like a dog in heat. Instead, if possible, he didn't really want to meet Rias since it was troublesome. He didn't really want to have much drama in his life and just enjoy the warmth of women. Rias might be able to provide him with the warmth of the woman, but there were many who could do what she could do. Moreover, wasn't it quite wrong of him to just sleep with her after what was happening to the Gremry house? Nevertheless, his answer surprised Sona. Sona knew that no matter how much she tried, she might not be able to replace Rias in Riser's heart, yet that didn't seem to be the case. No matter how beautiful and big Rias' breasts were, she was his wife, and he wouldn't change that. While Sona felt sorry for Rias, she was happy by his words. Naturally, Sona knew that Riser couldn't only be hers, but it didn't matter since she was his wife. Still, help her with the reconstruction of her domain. I will take out some money. Okay. Sona nodded. I will take care of the rest. Thanks. Riser kissed Sona's forehead, but then he noticed Sona kept staring at him. What's wrong? Are you sure that you don't want Rias? I am sure. Riser sighed helplessly, but then he remembered. Oh, right. You also said that Latia also wishes to meet me? Sona nodded and asked, do you want to meet her? Are you close to Latia? Not really. Sona shook her head. She is just a branch family of the Astaroth house. While we might meet on a certain occasion, our relationship isn't that close. It was said that only people with the same status would become friends with each other. Riser thought this sentence was correct. Yet, it couldn't be blamed, right? After all, the meeting of two people with different statuses was almost non-existent or rare. There might be some exceptions, but well, it didn't matter since now, it was a team to deal with the Juka. Still, you don't want Rias, but you want Latia to enter your harem? Riser looked at Sona and thought that he needed to show his majesty as a husband. Rias had been waiting for so long, but fortunately, Riser's city was great, And even if she waited for a week or more, it didn't matter since this place eased her heart. Yet even so, her heart was still restless as she wished to meet him. Fortunately, she wasn't the only one who was restless since Latia Astaroth was also in the same situation. As they had been staying for so long and their situation was quite similar, they became closer to each other during this time. Then, suddenly, Sona came as if bringing good news. Sona, is he going to meet me? Sorry, Rias. Sona apologized. It seems that he is still quite busy. Rias felt like cold water was poured on her head once again, wondering what was wrong with her. But, Latia, come with me. Riser wants to meet you. Eh? Latia was surprised, thinking that she couldn't meet him, so this result was unexpected, and it brought a smile to her mouth. Yes, Sona-sama. Still, Sona didn't leave and just told Latia to follow Tsubaki, who would lead her to Riser since there was still something that she needed to talk about with Rias. Oh, right. Riser told me that he is also going to send help to your family. Only Rias didn't listen to Sona and just wondered what she should do.